Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending this evening's meeting. It is a televised regular meeting of the Cupertino City Council. It's Tuesday, November 19th, 2024, and it's little after 6:45. Okay, so since the meeting has been called to order, and let's stand if we can for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible with liberty and justice for all.
Madam City Clerk, the roll call, please.
Councilmember Chow?
Here.
Councilmember Moore?
Here.
Councilmember Wei?
Here.
Vice Mayor Fruin?
Here.
Mayor Mohan?
Here. Okay, we have a couple of ceremonial items. I'd like to start by recognizing November 30th, 2024 as Small Business Saturday. So Saturday, November 30th is considered a Small Business Saturday, which is an annual celebration of the small businesses that help make our community vibrant, dynamic, and unique. Held on the Saturday after Thanksgiving of each year, Small Business Saturday gives us a special opportunity to recognize the significant contributions of local businesses and the essential role they play in our daily lives. Cupertino is home to an incredibly strong and resilient small business community, and we are proud of their contributions. Every day, local entrepreneurs overcome challenges to create value for customers, provide jobs for our residents. From retail shops to restaurants to tech startups and service providers, these businesses help define our city's character. As advocates of Small Business Saturday, my colleagues on the panel and I encourage everyone to join us in supporting our local businesses on November 30th and throughout the entire holiday season. Whether you're shopping for a gift or enjoying a meal, your support strengthens our economy and helps our community thrive. So let's make this holiday season one to remember by shopping small, supporting local, and celebrating the businesses that make Cupertino so special. Thank you. Madam City Clerk, is there a way we can recognize this in any other way?
I just wanted to double check that there wasn't a closed session report, Mayor, from the city attorney.
There is nothing to report.
And I also wanted to acknowledge that Councilmember Wei is, as you can see, participating via teleconference, so I will be requesting roll call votes from the council this evening.
Okay. So are we good with the ceremonial item?
Yes, to you, Mayor.
Point of order, City Attorney, shouldn't we know if there is anyone over the year of 18 in the same location, in the remote location?
Remote location is open to the public. There's no requirement that the individuals that are present there disclose themselves.
Oh, I thought I read that in the memo.
That's a different provision of the Brown Act.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on to presentations. The first one is the annual report of the Technology, Information and Communications Commission. And Council is expected to receive the report. As with all Commission reports, we are here to see the Commission showcase your activities for this year. And we can ask brief questions, but we won't really be getting into a discussion about your Commission.
Mayor, we have TIC Chair Prabir Mohanty here to make the presentation, and I will share the slides. Just let me know when to advance.
Okay. Is that the one where I speak? Good evening, Mayor Mohan, Vice Mayor Fruan, Commissioners Moore, Chow, and Commissioner Ang Wei. So I'm here today representing the Technology, Information and Communications Commission to give you an annual report on the activities that we have pursued over the course of last 1 year. Next. Okay, so that's the team that's part of TIC, and you're probably familiar with most of them since they were nominated through the Cupertino City Council. So myself as chair, Emma, Shireen, vice chair, and Sudeep Kumar, commissioner, Balu Donti, commissioner, Mukesh, all with incredible backgrounds, and they do a phenomenal job in carrying out the activities of the commission. Next. So this is for the residents of Cupertino. This is what we do. We advise the city council and city manager on all matters related to technology, information, and communications for the city of Cupertino and within the city of Cupertino. We serve as a liaison between the city and the public and technology and information and communication providers, especially enhancing the information from these providers, and also providing the education, because a lot of advanced technologies now currently in the marketplace, and we are deploying some of them in the city. We also provide, and such activities include opportunity for input from residents. We collect inputs through the traditional channels and disseminate non-commercial materials about Technology, Information and Communications Commission. And I'll give you examples of some of the seminars we have done, events we have held, and contests we have pursued. We recommend the best use of technology, information, and communications, and we also communications infrastructure and services for the maximum benefit of the city, and provide education to the community on the technology, information, communications, services, and everything that's out there. Next. So this was an event, hopefully many of you attended, and certainly I hope the council attended. I've seen some of you. The cyber security seminar that we held last year, we had speakers from some of the prestigious companies in the valley, such as Palo Alto Networks and some of the other security companies, as well as Tom EU and several folks from the city who are involved in these activities for the city. And we, as part of it, we had also done a science fair where we invited high school students come and participate, and we gave away prizes based on the merit of those submissions that they had made. We had also worked on we had these speakers gave presentations on the cyber security threats that are happening, and how to protect yourself from scams and other things, all the fraudulent stuff that's going on in the internet. This year we plan to again do something similar, and also do things, AI as related to cyber security, how the threats are becoming amplified with more advanced technologies coming into play. Next. So these are some of the technologies that we have championed and that have been deployed in the city of Cupertino. We are probably one of the we have pioneered this air and noise quality sensors by Lehigh and Stevens Creek quarries, because those were the areas, those were most impacted because of the activities of these quarries and the cement plant and so on. We also put in place some adaptive traffic signals, which is near the schools, such as near Monta Vista, Kennedy, and Lincoln. You have 3 schools, a lot of traffic in the morning. and to regulate the traffic by using adaptive traffic signal, so that in the morning in the direction of the schools, the light stays green longer. In the afternoon, it stays longer in the opposite direction when parents are picking up kids or kids are driving back home. Multimodal traffic count that we initiated for all the major intersections where we have a lot of traffic, and of course, the traffic is going up by day, and we have a lot of major streets like Stevens Green, Deanja, Wolf, and so on, Bollinger, and so on. So this gives an sense to us on the amount of cars, pedestrians, bicycles, and so on, which are passing through, and helps the city and the traffic departments to put better traffic policies and signal orientations and timings in place so that traffic can be controlled and monitored better. We reviewed the fiber optics master plan. You probably know that City of Cupertino has these fiber optics lines that have been laid out for broadband, and we recommended the places where these tunnels need to go through and so on, so that it becomes available in all neighborhoods. Next. Some of the things we are planning this year, of course, we had a much bigger list of major initiatives, but due to the cost reasons and not to make too much impact on the city staff's time, we pruned them down and went with something that will not have any budgetary impact. We will do another cybersecurity education, awareness and education. We have a working group, and they are working on it. Commissioner Balu Donti and Commissioner Sudeep Kumar are working on it. Exploration of autonomous taxi integration in urban areas, because as you may know, Waymo is now going nationwide, especially in the bigger metros like LA and Phoenix and New York City and San Francisco and so on. Others like Jukes and Cruise are also coming along, so very soon they will be coming to other cities. But as you know that Elon Musk and Tesla also have talked about autonomous driving. So we are looking at it. I have exchanged taste with Lisa Maukana, who is the CEO of OMO, and some of these other leaders like Aisawa, who runs Jukes, for them to come out and do some seminars so that the city council can attend, and also it's open to everyone, all the residents. We'll continue to champion new technologies, and one of the things we had is how the use advanced AI techniques to have budgetary savings to have a strategic impact on bringing down the budgetary costs, the city costs, but at the same time enhancing the services that can be provided by using advanced AI technology. That's something we plan to look at it, but it hasn't, this year it didn't make the cut, but we'll again propose for next year because it may have some impact on city staff's time. So those are all the things we are doing, and it has been awesome, and I must thank our CTO Terry, who has done a phenomenal job in every city council and getting everyone always alerted on all the things that are going on and getting us to deliver that we have everything we have promised on time, and appreciate the support from city council, city manager, and thank you all, also the residents of Cupertino, and we have always received a lot of support whenever we needed on anything, especially the highly attended cyber security seminar and so on. Thank you so much again.
Any questions for the Tech Commission? The TIC Commission? Seeing none.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your presentation,
Sure.
and I hope you will communicate to your commission members that
I
we
will.
appreciate
Yeah.
the work they
Thank
do.
you so much again for the time on the floor.
Next, we have two presentations by two of our sister cities, the Cupertino Bhubaneswar sister city and then the Cupertino Toyokawa sister city. We will go first with the Cupertino Bhubaneswar sister city.
Hello.
Yeah.
Good evening, all. Is somebody putting on the slides?
Yes, I will cue it up right now. Just give me one moment.
Thank you. While you're doing that, I would like to thank the Mayor, Sheila Mohan, and the Vice Mayor, Truan, Kitty Moore, City Council Member Liang Chow, and Hang Wei, our council members, to give me this opportunity. And it's also great to see our council member healthy, Hang Wei. Good to see you after such a long time. And I also want to thank the city staff, including Pamela Wu, for the support they've offered to the sister city. And I am actually in a remote part of Orissa, and I was fortunate enough to get the internet and it gives me always great pride to talk about the sister city, because I don't know whether you guys know, my great-grandfather was in the service of the Sena of Raja Krishna Gajapati of Parlakemedi, and he was involved in the formation of the Orissa state. So that always gives me pleasure. And it has been an amazing ride for the last few years that we have been doing the sister city initiatives. And this time, I'll just talk about what we did in 2024. Let's go to the next slide. And Reena, unfortunately, she's in a different part of Odisha and she could not connect because of the internet speed and everything, but we built it out together. So as you all know, we have been involved with a lot of activities like cultural, art, business exchange programs. We've done so many initiatives, including the India Independence Day. This was, I think, this event of the 8th Independence Day of the flag hoisting. And as you all know, we also did the first Odisha Day in the Silicon Valley. We did before the sister city was launched. We also did the Odisha Day, and we continue to do the Odisha Day celebrations here. And we do the student exchange programs, including the artist exchange initiatives, which I'll be talking about in the future slides. And we did a very interesting Heritage India Festival, what we also call it the Konarak Festival, in the Memorial Park. And this was the third one, and we'll discuss that a little bit. And we had a sister city delegation to Bhubaneswar, which was very successful. So going to the next slide. Please, yeah. This is the India Independence Day that we celebrated in front of the City Hall. It was very well received. We had a lot of appreciation and from the City Council members, as well as we got attendance from the Consulate General of India, or rather the Deputy Consul General who visited because he was busy, and we had other community leaders from the FIA there as well, and we had other City Council members as well attending the seminar. And by the way, we have been receiving a lot of good feedback from our local residents from Cupertino on this as well. Thank you again, City, for getting us the opportunity to do that. Please, next slide. And this was the 2024 Heritage India Fair, what we call the Konarak Festival, and also we clubbed it with what we call the Pura. So we wanted to include the other states, eastern states of India, and that also was pretty successful. You can see in the picture, we had a congressman, Ro Khanna, as well honored the event by him visiting and giving some nice awards to the youngsters of Cupertino. And then along with her, we had our mayor, Sheila Mohan, out there also giving out awards to a lot of our people who attended, as well as on the right, you can see we have Swayam Padi. He's kind of a cultural ambassador for us. He's from Odisha. He's one of the topmost Hollywood singers in Odisha. And he came down for the event and he really swayed the crowd with his beautiful melodious voice. And by the way, yesterday he was awarded the Odisha State Award as one of the best singers, just yesterday. And Reena could attend that as well. And they also recognized the initiatives that we do with him and how we promote the cultural exchange between Odisha and Cupertino, Bhubaneswar and Cupertino. And we had Odissi dance, as well as the dance in the middle you see, that's from Assam, this northeastern state. And on the right side, we had some other dance from Bengal. Then this was very well received. We had around 1,500 to 2,000 people attend. As you all know, this is the third time we are doing this event, and it takes time. And in the Cupertino area, there we are getting a lot of Indian events happening, so we are trying to figure out how to make sure we get the right audience. But this is a very good for a third year event to have more than 1,500 people attend the event. So that was again, thanks to the city for the support they have awarded to us in making this happen. And this is again, the funding that was completely raised by us based on other mediums. We did not get funding from the city on this part from any of the commissions. Hopefully next year we'll get some. Next slide, please. And the background that you see, the Konark festival, the Konark temple and everything was done by volunteers. It was complete, the structure was built by volunteers, and they spent maybe 3-4 weeks trying to build those frames and structures and everything. It was pretty well volunteer-driven effort to build out that stage. And this step is, as you all know, India being a democratic country, and Odisha too, we had a new government take over, and it was a completely new team who have never ever been in power, and it's called, the name of the party is called BJP. So it was very important for the Cupertino city to make a visit to educate, not educate, to update what we have been doing to the Sister City initiative. And we could, the mayor had invited our our mayor, Sheila Mohanji, and we also had invited Pamela Wu, the city manager. So this time it was a little different. We wanted to see in democracy, the elected officials change, but the city officials stay consistent. So we thought that this would be a good thing to have whatever discussions we have, the city manager can carry it forward even if the if elected officials change. Because we had some initiatives which really, one initiative got a little bit delayed because of that change. So this was very well received. And we met the mayor, and you see the mayor, her name is Sulochana Das from Bhubaneswar. Very smart lady from JNU, and she has been doing some miracles in Bhubaneswar. And next to her is the commissioner, Mr. Patil, and he is like the city manager. So there was a very good interaction. The city manager from Bhubaneswar, what we call the commissioner, presented, and they were all excited, or rather they're very positive about the sister city relationship. And they were looking forward to making plans as to when they should visit Cupertino. And we discussed about various initiatives that we did, and the city manager presented, our city manager, Pamela Wu, presented all about the city of Cupertino, about the org structure, about the various city council members, the various initiatives about how we support the transportation sector in terms of bike lanes and sanitation and IT and many things we discussed. And there was a very well received presentation from the city manager. And of course, the mayor is always very eloquent and articulate, and she was able to communicate, and she was covered by most of the TV channels in Odisha. And I was getting calls from all my friends. Actually, we missed one more slide, one more photograph that is based on, we had a very good meeting with the Indian Chamber of Commerce. And after the meeting, what they discussed, they wanted, there was a very good audience. Some of them want to come to Cupertino to start businesses. One of them, the two of them actually reached out to me. Even after that, I had meetings with them, and I would be talking with the economic development, I think it's Tina and Pamela Wu, trying to figure out what is the process for them to come to Cupertino to start up their business, what kind of support they can get from the city of Cupertino as well as the sister city. So that's kind of, they're small businesses, but it's a very good relationship start. And I don't want to take much time. I want to thank all of the elected officials for all their undiluted support for the sister city, and the PR staff, Samantha and many, Diana, they did an amazing job working with us till the day of the event that we went to. And the commissioner, the Bhubaneswar commissioner, as well as the mayor and the special secretary to chief minister, and many other folks who were working behind the curtain and helping us out. And most importantly, I would like to thank the mayor Sheila Mohan and the city manager Pamela Wu for accepting our invitation, visiting Bhubaneswar, and making the relationship more stronger and more positive. Really appreciate it, and thank you for the opportunity to speak about it to you guys. Thank you again.
Okay, thank you very much, Mahesh. Please communicate our thank you to Reena and the rest of the team. I can attest to the wonderful experience that the city manager and I had. This was exactly a week ago in Bhubaneswar, and just a wonderful hospitality and the warmth with which we were received. Lots of good ideas were exchanged, and we will see them hopefully come to fruition in the days to come. So are there any questions for Mahesh or Councilmember Chow?
I'd like to thank all the volunteers who made all the sister city events and trips possible. This really is great that this is happening, but I would like to request a report. My understanding is the city paid 100% of the airfare and hotel cost for city manager's trip to Bhubaneswar this time, and 10 days of city staffing time. And I'd like a report to justify why this is paid as out of the training expenses in a year when the city staff actually has reduced the training expense. So what's the official? Why do we need to send an official city staff person on this trip? What was the purpose? Since the council never met to talk about any official business with Bhubaneswar. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Councilmember Chow. We will discuss your concerns at another
I think I need
event
a second for the report. For memo.
We will give you a detailed report.
I would
the
like
days to come.
specifically from the city manager, not from the mayor.
Absolutely.
I'll do
Whatever,
that. I'm more than happy to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, but for now, I'd like to thank Mahesh and Reena and the Bhubaneswar team for putting all this together. So thank you again.
Thank you so much, City Council members, for all your support. Gives us great pride, and thank you.
Thanks. Okay, moving on. We will see the presentation from the Cupertino Toyokawa Sister City.
Good evening, Mayor Mohan, Council Members Wei, Chow, Fruin, and more. I'm Elisa Sakas. I'm the president of the Cupertino Toyokawa Sister Cities Incorporated, and there are many people here today from our organization. Our committee is here. So Wei, thanks. We organize the programming related to Cupertino's sister city of Toyokawa, Japan. I'd like to thank the city for all of your tremendous support of all of our programming and all of your support for all of the sister cities of Cupertino and in nurturing those relationships. There's so much we would like to share in giving our annual report. We decided to instead prepare a short highlight video to recap our activities for the year. It was prepared by Susan Satya, and you can play it right now. Thank you.
Cupertino Toyokawa Sister Cities 2024 highlights. Annual Art Exchange. Cupertino students' arts were displayed at the Sakuragaoka Art Museum, and the Toyokawa students' arts were displayed at the Cupertino Cherry Blossom Festival. Cupertino Cherry Blossom Festival, an award-winning Bay Area favorite festival. In 2024, we celebrated the 40th anniversary. Please save the date to visit the next festival on April 26th and 27th, 2025. After a 4-year hiatus, the student delegation program returned in 2024. The Cupertino delegates visited Toyokawa in June, and the Toyokawa delegates visited Cupertino in October.
The Bell Ringing for World Peace, a community event, was held in August.
Honoring those who perished in August 1945 in Toyokawa, and renewing our commitment to promote peace through people-to-people connections. Friends Forever, a reunion.
The Kleins and the Imaizumis met in 1988 through our adult delegation exchange program. They have been visiting each other for 35 years, and their friendship has now extended to the next generation.
As part of our commitment to support the community, we participated in many events, such as the Silicon Valley Fall Festival and others. We are very honored to have received the Crest Organization of the Year Award this year. Thank you to all our friends and community members who support us. See you next year.
We're especially happy. Oh, thank you. We thought a video would be a quick way to recap the year. We're especially happy that we were able to resume our annual middle school exchange program, and we have some of the delegates here today and many of their family members. And I'd like to introduce Arnav Shah, who will speak on behalf of this year's delegation. Arnav?
Good evening, Mayor Sheila Mohan and the members of the City Council. My name is Arnav Shah, and I'm honored to be here representing the 2024 Cupertino Toyokawa Student Delegation. I'd like to sincerely thank the City of Cupertino for its support for the Student Exchange Program with Toyokawa. This program has given us an incredible chance to experience Japanese culture firsthand. Hosting and visiting the Toyokawa students was an especially rewarding experience, allowing us to learn about their lives and to see how much we have in common, even though we live so far apart. In Toyokawa, our host welcomed us with such warmth and generosity that we felt like we were at home. Here we were just as excited to welcome them into our city. What stood out the most was that in schools in Japan, the teachers move from classroom to classroom, while in the US, the students move from classrooms. I'm excited to present a book that our delegation created. Each of us wrote a personal story to capture our experiences and memories from the exchange, and we'd like to give it to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Arnav. Thank you, Arnav. Some of our delegates go on to study Japanese in high school, and the Fremont Union High School district schools have an incredibly great reputation for their performance competing at the National Japan Bowl in Washington, D.C. each spring. And we'd like to congratulate the teams from Lynbrook and Cupertino High who competed this year. If you would all stand up, please. I just want to let you know the Lynbrook team, so they compete at various levels of Japanese proficiency. The Lynbrook team came in first in level 2, third in level 3, and first in level 4. This is nationwide. The Cupertino team came in level 2 third, in level 3 second, and level 4 second. So congratulations to these teams in representing Cupertino very well. Thank you very much. And I was hoping we could get a quick picture with council members. Can we do that? I don't know if there's a photographer, maybe one of our, oh, I see Torin back there. Could we get maybe a picture with the delegates and then the high school students and our committee members? I'd really appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Alyssa and the Cupertino Toyokawa Sister City team. Lots of good events throughout the year, and lots of fun was had by all. All right, moving on. Any postponements and orders of the day, Madam City Manager?
No, Mayor.
All right, we'll jump right into oral communications. Madam City Clerk, how many cards do we have?
I apologize, Mayor. Yes, I have 6 requests to speak in Community Hall. That is 18 minutes worth. I see 2 hands raised virtually, so another, so that's 24 minutes total.
So 6 plus 2, 8
Yes,
cards.
8 cards total, yes.
Okay. All right, let's start. We'll 3 minutes.
Okay, very
per,
good.
per speaker.
Okay, and I will rely, Councilmember Way, I will rely on you to notify me of any members of the public wishing to provide comments from the teleconference location. So just a reminder, anyone wishing to speak on this item, please submit a card or raise your hand virtually in the next 9 minutes. First we have David Lim, followed by Keith Kreft, followed by Lakshmi. David Lim? Yes, please approach the podium if you'd like to provide comments. Are you wishing to speak on agenda item 12? Okay. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is David Lim. I'm a Cupertino resident, and I love playing pickleball at the Memorial Park. As a veteran, I deeply value the park's memorial that honors those who made the ultimate sacrifice for our country. And as a father, I want to stay active and present for my family. Study shows that physical activity and social interaction can help us live longer. This is exactly why I love playing pickleball, especially at the Memorial Park. For the past 7 months, I played there daily, almost daily. And the welcoming community at the courts has become an important part of my life. I'm grateful for the city's efforts to maintain these courts in great conditions, and I'm confident that these courts benefit the health and well-being of many residents of Cupertino and beyond. Currently, we have to tape and retape the lines on 4 pickleball courts on a regular basis, and the rain doesn't get any better with the rain nowadays. I'm here to urge you to please consider painting the lines on the 4 courts at the Memorial Park, as this simple action will significantly improve the experience for our players who enjoys the game and contributes to the health of our community. I'd like to close with, they say that 1 apple a day keeps the doctor away. But I want to say, play pickleball for 1 hour a day keeps health trouble at bay. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, David. Next we have Keith Kreft, followed by Lakshmi, followed by Shan Gavo. Welcome, Keith.
Good evening. My name is Keith Kreft. I live on Wilkinson behind Kennedy Junior High. And I'd just like to say a little bit about this new R3 zoning where we're putting in townhomes on Linda Vista Drive. I attended the Summerhill meeting last week, and we got to see a little preview of what they're putting in. They're putting in 51 townhomes, cramming them into this very small parcel of land. Each one will have a 2-car garage in the first floor. Somebody raised the concern of, how many people actually park cars in a garage. So I did a survey on my block. This is just a block of Wilkinson that I live on, right behind Kennedy Junior High. And if you look at these numbers, you'll see the bottom line. There are 54 garages on our block. There were a couple homes I wasn't able to survey. Nobody was answering the door. And there were 36 cars not in the garages. I extrapolated this to say, well, there's going to be 51 homes, 102 garages in that new parcel of land, and which means we're going to have 68 cars that are not going to be in those garages. Summerhill said that they're going to have an extra 15 parking spots, most of which were right along Linda Vista Drive, and I think the other ones that are inside the area are probably not going to survive because the sharp corners the fire truck would need to make, I don't think they're going to be putting as many parking spots in there. So bottom line is that we're going to create a huge, Linda Vista Drive is going to be a parking lot. I measured how many parking spots would fit on Wilkinson on one side of the street. We can put 40 cars out on our car, which means on our side of the street, which means just about all of Linda Vista Drive will be filled up with cars if we don't do something about maybe rezoning this area to something else. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Keith.
And I printed this out if you'd like to have copies of this.
I will collect that from you. And next we have Lakshmi, followed by Shanmi Gavel, followed by Kartikeyan. Okay, welcome, Lakshmi.
My name is Lakshmi. I am part of Cupertino city for I'm living in Cupertino almost 20 plus years, and I'm here in United States more than 30 years. And I actually part of many social non-profit organization doing a lot of community service. Currently, I am representing Ambedkar King Studies Circle. It's our goal is to really oppose any discrimination. It doesn't have to be anything like related to caste or everything. Every single discrimination we oppose. So we had a conference this year, and this is our 5th conference, and we really condemned one action done by our city that we would like to read it here. So on July 2023, our city council issued a proclamation opposing legal protection for those oppressed by caste. The Ambedkar King Study Circle's 5th conference analyzed how Hindu supremacists advance their agenda under the guise of minority rights and multiculturalism. Drawing from the white supremacist playbook, they argue that legal protection for caste oppressed individuals amount to racial profiling and civil right violations. AKC, in collaboration with democratic and progressive forces, will work to mobilize the public to expose the political influence of Hindu supremacists in various public offices across the USA. The Fremont City Council resolution passed in the spring of 2023 condemning so-called Hinduphobia, and the Cupertino City Council subsequent resolution in the summer of 2023 opposing legal protection for the caste oppressed, specifically during the consideration of SB 403 in the California legislation. It's clearly condemned. These resolutions were orchestrated by Hindu supremacists who, due to their social economical advantages and early migrations, have monopolized the narration of the social and cultural life of the Hindu diaspora, especially Indian diaspora. These resolutions masquerade as defenders of religious freedom, diversity, and digging dignity. Not only fuel insidious propaganda, but also rob the oppressed.
I'm sorry, that is your time?
Okay. I think you have the thing that you can read.
Yes, I did distribute that. Thank you. And next we have Shan Gavel, followed by Karthikeyan, followed by Jean Bedord. Welcome.
I'm an entrepreneur. Want to tell a quick story about caste. Despite being recognized by America as a person of extraordinary ability, invited through O1A visa, invited for most sought after Einstein EB1A green card, one of the top venture capitalists asked me, I don't have something he wants, many moons ago. I didn't recognize then. But when I was made to struggle despite 10 years of bootstrapping, even I figured out what he meant. He meant caste and Hindutva. The mayor of the city, which has passed a Hindu supremacist resolution to oppose the legal protection for the caste oppressed, may know him. As a Sudra, know the pains of multi-century invented systemic oppression caste firsthand. Have seen the oppressions of Brahminical Sanatana Dharma, came to America in pursuit of happiness, thinking I will see equality here. But creating a false guise of protecting minority Asian Indians, they have passed a oppressionist Hindutva resolution. The city of Cupertino proclaims that the city is opposed to any stigmatization, caste connotation, negative connotations such as caste. What will happen if a white man comes here asking for protection from black people? That's the same thing Cupertino City Council has done now. I am Shan Shankaran, founding volunteer, Bharat Ki Awaaz, General Secretary, Indian Overseas Congress, friend of Ambedkar King Study Circle. All these three organizations represent thousands of Indian Americans. I am a Hindu, I am not oppressed. Despite being a Sutra, I don't need to be protected. I have some privileges, if not the full privilege. Some of the Brahmin investor who sarcastically remarked, there are Dalits who are generationally oppressed, who need a protection, banning caste-related discrimination. I strongly condemn the Cupertino City Council's proclamation opposing legal protection for the caste oppressed. Specifically, it was made during the consideration of SB 403 in the California legislature. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Karthikeyan, followed by Jean Bedord, followed by Luis Sidati. Welcome.
Hello. Good evening, City Council members, and good evening, the participants. My name is Karthikeyan Shanmugam. I live in Pleasanton. I was in Cupertino for a short while. So today I come here to echo what Lakshmi told in the beginning of the meeting, that was condemn the City Council for passing a resolution against legal protection against a caste discrimination. And during the start of the meeting, some gentleman talked about the cyber security and how to guard our systems from the digital attack. Here today I am to mention about a more harmful issue that is haunting America is the Hindu supremacy, and that is masquerading in the guise of minority rights and diversity. And when we are providing the security to our system, that we should have a gatekeeper which implement the security. But here in our case of the City Council, the City Council itself is allowing such a divisive and hate of the forces to pervade our society. I would like to mention two examples, that the very resolution which is orchestrated by these Hindu supremacist forces, which opposed legal protection to the caste oppressed in the federal courts that their cases were defeated. Both in the case of when the very supremacist forces challenged the legal protection to the caste oppressed in the California state universities, that is overruled by the court, and also when the Seattle city passed the protection for the caste oppressed, that was challenged by the supremacist forces. In the federal court ruled against it. When that is the situation, how the city council members, even with the Indian origin member as a mayor, or then he was a city council member, was completely invisible to all this Hindu supremacist tactics. And I'd like to end that even today, when somebody is presenting about the Cupertino Bhubaneswar link, that he mentioned very, very boldly and proudly that they have the BJP government in place, which bringing change to the Orissa. That is the very government which is headed by in the central the Narendra Modi. We should not forget that he was banned to enter into the US between 2005 and 2014, and the very forces are really becoming a threat to Cupertino and the US, and the city council should be very much aware of it. And I would like to request the city members that to request the city council to be vigilant of this, otherwise that we will be attacked by this Hindu supremacist, which will destroy the very fiber, the democratic fiber of the American society. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jean Bedord, followed by Luis Sadati. And then we will move to those requesting to speak virtually. Welcome, Jean.
Good evening, council members and staff. My name is Jean Bedord, and I am a Cupertino resident. I am speaking to you tonight regarding the emails that have been sent criticizing City Manager Pamela Wu and City Attorney Chris Jensen. They recite a litany of complaints that in the bigger scheme of things don't really matter to the business of the city. All of the letters are negative, but when I talk with residents, they think both the city manager and city attorney are doing a good job. Given the turmoil prior to the hiring of Pamela Wu, the relative calm of the last 2 years has been welcome to all of our residents. They really appreciate the improvement in governance. Meetings end somewhere between 11 and 12, and there are no more wee hours of the morning as I sat through more than a few times. Decisions get made on a timely basis instead of being drug out over multiple meetings. And there have been some major accomplishments. The settlement of the $74 million settlement of the CDTFA is a major accomplishment. It could have bankrupted the city. Approval of the housing element means that there are no more builder's remedy projects. We only had 4. The city of Saratoga has 20, and it's a smaller city. The criticisms come from less than a dozen people, hardly representative of the rest of the residents. I urge the council to recognize the value of the city manager and the city attorney to our city. There are always a few bumps in the road, but they have both done a very good job. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Jean. Next, we have Luis Sadati. Welcome, Luis.
Hello, good evening. This is Louise Sadati, and I've been a resident of Cupertino for 37 years and growing. The performance evaluations of Pam Wu, the city manager, and Chris Jensen, our city attorney, are ongoing. I believe they will continue into Thursday of this week. And I have a few comments about the two of them. First, if you keep looking down, you'll look like you're being admonished. So if you could look up at me time to time, that would be terrific. First, Chris Jensen has been very expert, clear, and impartial in his interpretation and conveying of the law and legal process and procedures for Cupertino in general and the City Council meetings in particular. He has admonished even me in speaking to stay on topic and with civility. I believe I have been able to follow his instructions throughout this year. He has even been able to bring order to the council meetings when some speakers or audience members were attempting to shout over or speak over the proceedings. He has been effective in maintaining order in our meetings and presenting calm and expert legal advice. Second, but not least, is Pamela Wu. She has been amazing in staying in this challenging position for 2.5 years. Her predecessors, we had tremendous city staff turnover and turmoil in the years before 2022. She has shown an openness to meeting with different residents citywide for different wide-ranging topics. She has been present in meetings throughout the year and has demonstrated calmness, civility when facing multiple demands, sometimes some very upset and loud voices. She always presents a smile, never speaks in a harsh nor accusatory tone. The city staff has risen in the last year. We don't have a mass exodus of staff as in previous years. I would like to acknowledge both Pam Wu and Chris Jensen for shepherding the housing element and achieving HCD acceptance and closing the door on builder's remedy. They have also helped to make our governance efficient, transparent, and in accord with the civil grand jury findings. These are just a few of the major accomplishments they have achieved. I wish to give you my kudos to you both for a job well done. You have my admiration, and more importantly, you have the admiration and respect of the citywide residents. Letters will follow.
Thank you, that is your time. And we will move to those requesting to speak virtually. We have 5 hands raised from David, San R, Debbie Timmers, Lisa, and Sashi Begor. Welcome, David.
Good evening. The rezoning of Yuba Lake Court near Linda Vista Drive highlights really glaring deficiencies in how residents are notified, how they're heard, and how we're respected. Simply put, the public has lost trust of the city management, and we do need accountability. We can look at the stealthy rezoning of the land, to the inadequate notifications, to the suppression of a petition signed by 745 of us that put red tape around the process for having residents' agenda items be heard by City Council. And this is not a simple oversight. The city continues to shift protocols for resident communications, making it harder for our voices to be included on the record, continue to mask petitions, delay action, and hide behind the Brown Act and other nuances to avoid discussion. This is strategically leaving out topics that are of clear importance to the people who live here. These are protocols, by the way, that are not adopted by Sunnyvale, not adopted by San Jose, Saratoga, Los Gatos, Mountain View, or virtually any other city, big or small, in the state of California. And Yuba Lake Court is just the tip of the iceberg on actions that are taken to suppress resident concerns. The implications, by the way, extend far beyond just this project and beyond even the recent election. City residents aren't going to be ignored as this new standard, irrespective of who you voted for or what you think about the development near Linda Vista. The implications of doing so are too far-reaching. Last week, 50 of us attended a meeting at Summerhill about the high-density project plan at Yuba Lake Court. This is, of course, the developer of the 51 units plus in a single-family home neighborhood. And one thing was abundantly clear. The developer deferred all key decisions back to the city, just so you know, emphasizing that the city's process, policies, and decisions are what makes or breaks these outcomes. So when you're changing your communications protocol to suppress the public, that's just not going to be sustainable. It's being cute. It's not about maintaining order. Understand for a moment why people are upset. The residents are really watching closely. And unlike what a prior speaker said, it's not just a few residents. Those are just the ones that spoke tonight. The recent election results to date already show a shift in mindset in how we're reacting to how we've been treated. And that momentum is only going to grow. So we're asking for changes, not just in communications protocol, but in the culture and the management of the city. We need transparency and accountability to be a core value and not an exception to the rule. I urge the city to take this opportunity to rebuild trust. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, David. Next we have San R, followed by Debbie Timmers, followed by Lisa. Welcome, Sam.
Good evening, Mayor Mohan and council members. That's a hard act to follow, going after David. But I would like to actually congratulate Mayor Mohan, Vice Mayor Fruin, and Council Member Way, as well as the City Manager Pamela Wu. I think you've accomplished something over the past 2 years that could not otherwise have been accomplished. Your accomplishment probably might be one of a kind in this decade, at least for Cupertino. I think what you have done is really brought the city together, united the city, united the east and the west sides of the city, united neighborhoods from Schofield to Linda Vista Drive, from Inspiration Heights to Creston, from Monta Vista to Monta Vista South, and all parts of East in their united recognition of how residents have been put down in the past 2 years. It has taken 2 years of your accomplishments for people to realize what is going on with the city. And what we see with the ongoing ballot counting is reflecting in those results. Over 10,000 votes for Councilmember Kitty Moore, who was unceremoniously removed from committees and targeted in harsh and unprecedented manners. Residents saw through what is going on. A close second position that is still ongoing for someone that was not an incumbent and that was unceremoniously removed from the Planning Commission in ways that had never been seen before and targeted in open session. We have closed session performance evaluations for the city manager. We give them the dignity of that closed session, and yet we put ordinary residents to an open session flogging for hours, letting people take pot shots at people that are just volunteering and giving their time. I think city residents are smart enough to see through that. And I ask all of us to reflect on what this election is telling us. What this election is telling us is that we need to stop and really reflect on the ways that we're operating in. We cannot continue to ignore residents. We cannot continue to push agendas that fundamentally defy common sense and continue to challenge the way that things are being done. I request all in staff, in leadership, in the council that will remain after 2 weeks to please reflect and consider changing how we operate so that we as a city can function and come together and heal. Thank you.
Thank you, San. Next we have Debbie Timmers, followed by Lisa, followed by Sashi Bugor. Welcome, Debbie.
Hello. Thank you, Mayor Mohan and council members. I am Debbie Timmers. I've been a resident of Cupertino for 10 years, and I want to speak in support of our city manager, Pamela Wu, and lawyer, Chris Jensen. Both city employees make me very proud of our city. They are highly qualified and ethical, and I do not feel like they are ignoring residents. Chris shows himself to be knowledgeable, ethical, and fair in meetings, and I feel confident having him manage the legal affairs of our city. Pamela also manages herself very well in meetings and ensures things run well. She clearly has high expectations of staff, but at the same time is supportive of them, making sure they can accomplish the many things that are asked of them. Since we no longer see the staff losses we were once seeing, this seems to be an effective strategy. I want to be a well-run city. In both cases, their evaluations should be based on meeting the stated expectations of their roles and not on politics. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Next we have Lisa, followed by Sashi Begor. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. First, because I don't want to forget to say this, and I'm not sure it matters if if a resident says it anymore, but I hope that item number 12 on the consent calendar is pulled. Okay, so you've just heard in the last 5 or 6 speakers a wide, I don't want to say division, but there is a wide variety of comment about the top 2 staff members in the city of Cupertino. There was an opportunity yesterday at the closed session meeting to speak before and say the words you wanted to say or write in. And I will note that when there was one of the most dramatic evaluations of a city attorney years ago, Vice Mayor Bruin and Jean Bedort, who spoke earlier, both had things to say about the firing of such attorney. There was none of this display during an open council meeting about this, and it seems misplaced, but I'm certainly grateful that Speaker David and San and others have counterbalanced those comments. And I'm really sorry that I may be talking about this, but I couldn't leave it unsaid. Yesterday was the time to do this. And I have a great concern that one of the speakers actually said they believed that Thursday there would be a meeting to finalize the evaluation. This was a closed session meeting that has not been reported out. How would a resident know that? Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Sashi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'd like to make 2 quick comments. First of all, there were a number of people that were complaining about the city's proclamation against SB 403. I want to make one statement. They were all making a statement that they care about the Dalits, but none of them mentioned Milind Makwana, a Dalit warrior who was in favor of the proclamation, who lost his life on that day in the city of Cupertino. He lost his life fighting for that proclamation. So that shows that those people that were here complaining about the proclamation really do not care about the Dalits or anyone else. They were here to deliver for their handlers. Moving on. I also want to echo what the previous speakers have said, whether it was San or David or Lisa or others. We have reached a point where there's a lot less transparency in what's going on in the city. We are tired of civil jury investigations. We're tired. We all know that commissioners serve at the pleasure of the council. If you wanted to take someone off, it would have been very simple to just ask them to resign. We didn't need the drama. Clearly, we want to get back there. We want transparency when there is rezoning. We want fewer things on the consent calendar. We want to see more discussion. We want to hear, we want to be able to come out there and give our opinion on more things. So I'd like to end this by saying, let's go back and reinstate the communication protocols that we used to have before, so we don't have to specifically state that we want our written communications to be included. Thank you.
Thank you, Sashi. Mayor, no additional requests to speak on this item?
Okay. Great. That ends the oral communications part of the agenda, and thank you for all the speakers who came before us in person as well as on Zoom. Let's move on to the consent calendar. And I know there are some items that have been pulled. Madam City Manager, could you
Yes, Mayor.
clarify?
Item number 7 was pulled by Councilmember Moore. Item number 12 was pulled by Councilmember Chow. Item number 14 pulled by Councilmember Chow. And so is item number 15 pulled by Councilmember Moore.
Okay. So just to, it's 7, 12, 14, and 15? Is that what it is?
That is correct.
Sure. All right. All right, so let's is there, what do we do now? We approve the consent calendar other than the items that were listed? 7, what is it? 7, 12, 14, and 15.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Mayor?
Yes.
I believe we need to take public comment on the consent calendar.
Take it before this, okay. All right, let's do public comments for any items on the consent calendar. Are there any cards?
So I don't see any cards for the items that remain on the consent calendar. I do have cards for item 12, which per the current process will be moved to after the action calendar.
Correct. Yeah, these are comments. I am asking for comments for items on the consent calendar that were not pulled. Seeing none. No,
I see
okay.
none.
All right. So there is a motion and there's a second. Let's do a roll call vote for the consent calendar. Other than items 7, 12, 14, and 15.
Councilmember Chow?
Aye.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Wei?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Fruin?
Aye.
Mayor Mohan?
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously.
Okay. Okay, so we go there. Public hearings, we have none. We have the action calendar.
Mayor, can I ask for a 5-minute recess for staff to set up, and we'll come back with the presentation for item 16.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Let's take a brief recess until 8:15. Welcome back, everyone, from our short recess. We will go on to the action calendar, item number 16, which is to adopt an allocation plan for funds uncommitted from the sales tax repayment reserve. And the recommended action for council is either option A or option B or option C. Madam City Manager, there is a staff report, I see.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is as promised. This is step 2 and part 2 of the continuation of our good news. We brought an item to council for consideration at the last meeting to uncommit the reserve for a unforeseen challenge that we were preparing for. And with the good news and the press release with the CDTFA settlement, we were able to retain those funds. And with council support, you've uncommitted those funds. So what we're doing is we're presenting options for council to consider. How would you like to allocate these funds going forward? Administrative Service Director Christina Alfaro and staff will be presenting to you options for council to consider. I would like to stress that there is no action for council to spend the money. There's no spending of any of these money right now. However, we are providing several options for council to consider moving forward so that staff can proceed accordingly to council's direction. So with that said, I'm going to turn the floor to Christina for her to walk you through. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Video can project my presentation onto the screen. There we go. Perfect. So again, good evening, Mayor, City Council. I'm not sure why I'm echoing, but let's see if that's better. I'm going to go ahead and proceed if it's not too distracting. Okay, let's try it now. Sorry, I think that was operator error. Thank you so much, Kirsten, for coming to my rescue. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started with this presentation. As the City Manager Wu mentioned, this is kind of part 2 follow-up from our meeting on after Council uncommitted the $74.5 million sales tax payment reserve funds that we had set aside following CDTFA settlement news. So this evening, what I hope to cover is provide a little bit of background, not so much on the CDTFA audit, I think we've talked about that sufficiently, but kind of how we came to the options that we're presenting to you this evening. In addition, we want to go over what we've termed areas of focus and guiding principles. This really provided the foundation and the framework for the options that we're presenting before you this evening. And so that's just when we try to look at what to push for, what to potentially bring forward and what not, we try to go back to these areas of focus and guiding principles. And then lastly, we'll go over the options A through C of potential plans for Council's consideration. We're not making a recommendation on any given plan, we're just simply here to provide options and also to get feedback from Council on the option that we provided, or if there's an additional option you would like us to look into. With that, a little bit of the background. We'll start with the reductions that we've made to date through 2 years of budget reductions. The majority of the reductions we've taken thus far have been in fiscal year 24 were really related to materials and contract, along with the elimination of 13 vacant full-time positions, resulting in $7.9 million in reductions. In addition, I need to go back the other way. There we go. In addition, in fiscal year 25, we kind of switched the way we were showing the reductions into different areas, including community benefit, fiscal accountability, infrastructure, operations, and maintenance. For community benefits, the only outstanding item that was not funded was 4th of July fireworks. For fiscal accountability, we reduced about $2.8 million there. The majority of the cost were related to aligning law enforcement budget with their actual cost. We also removed the enterprise resource planning software, or ERP, and also reduced potential legal cost. In terms of infrastructure, we had a $2.9 million reduction. The majority here was there was no funding for our CIP reserve, and tree maintenance was moved in-house. For operations and maintenance was the elimination of 2 project managers and the reduction of part-time staff. This also included additional materials and contract reductions at $8.7 million. Now, not listed on the chart, just in terms of we were kind of covering the high dollar items on the chart, or items that were left over. Some other items that I want to bring to Council's attention this evening that were other reductions that we've made. This includes reductions to community funding that was reduced to $32,000, down from $92,000 in fiscal year 24. Cupertino and the volunteer fair were also eliminated, but ultimately combined into a teen resource fair. Lastly, cleaning schedules have been reduced at several city facilities, resulting in about $100,000 in savings annually, and the scene publication went to a digital-only format. So some additional background as we were building these models is we looked back at community budget surveys we had done in the past to see if there were any specific areas where residents either wanted us to keep services or areas where they might have been okay in comparison to reducing other services. We also took note from the comments that we heard from the public and council at the 10-15 meeting when these funds were originally uncommitted. And we reached back out to our department heads to say, based on the reductions that you've made, what are things that you would like to see come back and what's feasible to come back, and ask them to include those as part of potential add backs this evening. So again, we'll come back into our areas of focus. So when we're looking at areas of focus and guiding principles, talk a little bit about how this became kind of our foundation and our framing for the plans that are before you this evening. When we were looking at areas of focus, we first and foremost tried to focus on were there any community benefits that were missed that were feasible to add back at this point in time. We also looked at what were services that were potentially reduced, could those be added back at this time. We also wanted to look at investing in our employees. During the first year of cuts especially, a lot of the reductions were made off of training and development for employees, so we wanted to look at that aspect as well. And then lastly, we said anything that wasn't originally a reduction, but you think it's a good idea to bring back now, we wanted departments to let us know what some of those might be, and that's how we try to categorize any request for a potential additional funding. Guiding principles is kind of try to keep us on the straight and narrows as to not increase our structural deficit. So the first thing we really focused on is any one-time funds that had ongoing benefits. And I'll give you a couple practical examples that happened right here in Cupertino quite a few years ago when we sold Prune Ridge Avenue. At that time, the council at that time made two decisions to do with the money, which I think was about $24 million at the time. One of them was to put significant investment into the city's pavement and roads, which resulted in the city investing a lot of dollars in getting to a very good pavement condition index, or PCI. Now, that really paid dividends for us these last 2 years as we were looking for reductions, as about $2 to $3 million of our reductions came from reducing funding to the pavement. And we were able to do that in a way that really had minimal impacts because the roads had gotten up to such a good standard. The other thing that council did with that money was to pay off the unfunded actuarial liability of our retiree health benefits trust and our retiree health benefits trust. That also paid dividends in fiscal year 23 and 24 when we actually used those dollars to offset general fund costs, thus resulting in a savings to the general fund. So those are just some examples of one-time dollars that could have a longer-term benefit for the city, whether kind of seen or unforeseen, right? I don't think when the council made that decision back then, they forecasted that in 10 years we'd be looking to kind of bring either that funding down or to pull on those dollars, but luckily they were there for us to use. The second is, and something you've heard me probably harp on quite a few times in these chambers, is one-time funds should be used for one-time purposes because once that money runs out, it runs out, and if you have a lot of ongoing expenses that you're using this for, it's just going to exacerbate the structural deficit that we have in our out years. Third is to hold for future use. And this really means is we don't want to spend the money just to spend the money. There should be a good reason and purpose behind why we want to use these dollars. And if that doesn't exist, that it's okay to hold the funds. You'll see in all three options we present to you this evening, you'll be holding funds for future use, anywhere from about $68 million to the full $74.5 million. So that's one of the things that you'll see in all three options have that. And the last is to limit ongoing expenses. I already covered this briefly. We don't want to exacerbate our structural deficit if we don't have to, so we try to minimize these as much as we could. So now into an overview of options A and C. This table is really meant to provide kind of a high-level overview of how these plans are the same and how they might be different from one another. So we have the allocation plans listed in the column all the way to your left. And what we have over the top is any money being recommended to transfer to the capital reserve? Are any allocations being asked for current use? And are any dollars being set aside in general fund reserves? So you'll see that option A just has the money being held as a general fund reserve. Option B has a little bit in each category, and then option C has all but dollars in the general fund reserve. And I'm hoping as we go through the examples, you'll kind of see how these the check marks or the X's were determined. So we also want to point out that all plans are fiscally responsible. If council wanted to move forward with any of the plans, we think that they're all good plans to move forward with. Some other considerations before we hop into the detail of the three options is the city has sufficient reserve as recommended by the Government Finance Officers Association, or GFOA, which is kind of the national branch over finance officers or finance officials in government. They recommend 2 months of operating expenses. The city actually has 2 months of operating expenses plus 2 months of revenues in our economic uncertainty reserve. All the funds are currently invested or earning interest that are being put before you this evening. Also that as a city, we're limited by state code on what investment vehicles we can use, which limits kind of the return. And that's because per state code, we're first at safety, liquidity, and then yield when we're moving forward. The last bullet is really, we would like council to consider kind of when you're looking at the use of funds or putting funds away, how do you balance kind of investing the funds against providing public services, right? With a cautious approach to the fact that we're still structurally deficit, right? So those are some of the things you'll want to weigh as we go forward. With that, we're going to go ahead and hop into option A. I'm going to get ahead on my notes here. So option A has no budget adjustment recommendation. That funds would be held in a new committed reserve. This reserve would be drawn down per city council direction as the funds are expended and would not be replenished as these are one-time funds. We point all of that out because when we create a new reserve, we're supposed to make sure we know what happens once that reserve runs out and how that reserve should be used. So option A is we hold the funds. There's no specific purpose for them. We don't know how long we're going to hold them. And so we wanted to develop some sort of analysis to say kind of how should maybe council consider this option. And what I'm going to go through kind of some actual more real city numbers, and then I'm going to try to provide a practical example, and I hope that one of those two will land. So first, we're looking at a chart that compares inflation versus our long-term investment growth. And for this, we use the current investment benchmark that we have with Chandler Asset Management. And what we did is we took the last 10 years as a kind of forecasting into the next 10 years. We don't exactly know what's going to happen, but as you see, as we start to load the lines on this chart, there's been ups, there's been downs, and there's been some kind of a balancing that happens there as well. So first and foremost, we're going to put this red line up here. This is signifying what's happened with inflation over the last 10 years. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to model what our investments did over that same 10-year period. As you can see with the orange line is that for most years, inflation outpaced our investments. And that's not to say that we shouldn't invest the money. It's just that we're limited in what we can invest. The dollars continue to earn interest even at a modest rate, and that continued to gain the dollars. What this example is showing, and what I'll show in the next two lines, is if you're keeping it over the long term, the dollars continue to grow. I want to make that clear. It's the spending power that diminishes as inflation outpaces our investment returns. And so you'll see the green line is if we took any interest earnings and reinvested them, the value of the dollar, assuming the inflation on the red line, would drop to just over $60 million from 74.5. If we chose instead to take the investment gains and not reinvest them but use them towards, say, operations or projects, that number drops to a little over 50 million. And so with this example, we're not saying don't spend the money. We're not saying hold the money. We're saying just something to consider the longer that we hold the dollars based on our investments. So I'm going to try to give you a practical example here on how you might consider this if this was your own personal finances. So let's say you have repairs that you need to make to your home. And maybe you want to do some repairs and some upgrades as well, and you have some extra cash on hand, and you want to use those towards repairs. This extra cash is available for you for any use as all your other expenses are covered. Now let's say a friend of yours tells you it would be better to invest those funds. Assuming your investments were restricted in the same way the city is, in this scenario, because our investments don't earn enough to outpace inflation, it would make more sense to complete the repairs and put the funds to good use if one should exist. You could still choose to hold the funds in an investment account, but the potential increase in cost to repairs would result in a decrease in spending power for those invested dollars. However, if there's no immediate need, so if the need for repairs didn't exist, you would still hold the funds and earn some interest on those dollars. Just a long way to say hold the funds, spend the funds, or just you have to find, we're not saying spend the money just to spend it. If there's a good reason to spend it, we'd like you to consider to spending those dollars versus holding on to them. With that, after every option, we're going to go over and kind of check a box on our guiding principles to say which of these were checked off on here. For option A, since we're not asking for any allocations in the current year, it's just hold for future use and limit ongoing expenses that are checked here. Moving on to option B. Option B Option B shows dollars being held for future use. So it's transferring almost $32 million to the capital reserve. Now this doesn't spend the dollars. This actually just moves money over for potential use. Should staff want to move forward with any CIPs, that plan has to come back to council for adoption. So effectively what this does is this takes money from the general fund that's in it and moves them over as revenue into the capital reserve, not as an expenditure line that they can spend. In addition, this option also calls for holding on to $31 million in a new committed reserve in the general fund for deficit funding. We took all the deficit years, added those up, and wanted to put those away. What this really does is provide a safeguard should we not have additional revenues or have we not made the appropriate expenditure reductions when the deficits in the out years hit. This provides a mechanism to be able to fill that gap without having to disrupt operations. In total, for future use, this option recommends almost $63 million for future use. This option also recommends about $12 million for current use, with $11.3 million of those dollars being one-time allocations and about $353,000 being ongoing allocations. I'm not going to go over in detail what those requests are, so I'm going to hit some of the highlights. However, attachment E in our staff report does show in detail the recommendations or what is being asked for the 11.3 and the 353,000. So there's two major items being asked for. One is to bring our enterprise resource planning software that I talked about earlier in the presentation that was eliminated back for replacement. This is our human resource and finance software. We are aware that our vendor is going to be reaching end of life with this product, and they will no longer be providing updates. This provides staff the opportunity to go out for RFP and pick a replacement system on our terms, on our timeline. It also will result in additional efficiencies, as we may be able to, in our current system, we've had to have other contracts for other items for things that didn't work as well. We're hoping we can get an ERP that is all-encompassing, thus resulting in some savings and efficiencies for staff as well. The second big item I'll go into in a little detail in the next slide is a one-time additional discretionary payment, ADP, to our to CalPERS, the city's pension system. And we're going to go over that in just a moment about what are some of the reasons you might want to consider that. And that's, I don't know if I said it, but $10 million, so almost the bulk of the dollars we're talking about. I also want to point out that option C includes the same recommendations for current allocations as option B. So we won't talk about it a second time, but just as a reminder that it's in there. So there are some benefits of doing additional discretionary payment to CalPERS. First and foremost, it increases the funded status from 66 to 75%. Second, it decreases our ongoing payments, and that helps lower our structural deficit in the out years of our forecast. It helps us manage our long-term debt, as we know this is a big expense line item on our budget, and what we can do to reduce it would benefit us over the long term. I also want to point out we do have a 115 trust for pension. That trust was originally set up to counteract CalPERS investments. So we didn't think CalPERS had the correct discount rate at the time, and we thought we wanted to set up this fund should any CalPERS rates come in higher. This fund could be used as a smoothing fund. We also created the 115 trust because it allowed the city to retain control over the investments of those dollars as well. And just a little bit of how these funds work separately. I wanted to provide another practical example as well on this one. And for this option, I wanted you to think about this payment like if you have a second mortgage or an equity line of credit on your home. If you're able to pay down your equity line completely or pay off the second mortgage, right, you own more of your home outright than you otherwise wouldn't. That kind of is our funded status going from 66 to 75. You have less debt, you have less ongoing payments, right? That's one payment you were able to wipe away, and likely you'll have some interest savings as well doing away with that loan. In that way, our ADP can also be viewed as an investment because CalPERS is anticipating a 6.9% return. If they can meet that return, which is is a big if they can meet that return, that would these dollars are invested in those same accounts. But also a caveat that city has no control over how CalPERS invests the dollars, but we just wanted to point out might be a different way to look at it as well. And this is similar to what we did about 10 years ago with the, except that we're not completely paying off our unfunded actuarial liability, we're just paying off a portion at $10 million. So option B, considerations. This one has one-time funds for ongoing benefits. We would consider that both the ERP and the $10 million payment as meeting that category. It also has just funds that are just simply one-time use. We are still holding about $68 million for future use. This one gets 2 check marks on this category because it not only holds funds in the general fund, but it also holds funds in the capital reserve. With that, we'll move on to staffing. Staffing is included for both options B and C, but is not included in option A. For staffing, staff is recommending a 3-year limited term grant management analyst position. This position would serve to identify, apply for, track, report on grants. We had previously had a consultant that helped us identify and apply for grants. What staff found is there was still a heavy lift for staff, and the consultant didn't have a good grasp of our projects. As we were moving forward, we ultimately ended that contract, and what we're finding now is the department staff that mainly handles the grant is getting a little overwhelmed almost by the paperwork, kind of how to keep up and make sure we're in compliance and we're able to pull down the dollars. In addition, we hope this position will also be able to have a little bit of bandwidth to assist in our purchasing, as well as we've rolled out our new policy. We still have a lot of questions and people are kind of getting used to the process. That's another place we hope we can provide some assistance to the departments. In addition to the 3-year limited term position, we're also asking for 4 new classifications. One is the Assistant Director of Administrative Services. One is the grants analyst, which I just mentioned, a Senior Business Systems Analyst, and a Supervising Code Enforcement Officer. And these requests are really coming forward as we're in the 2nd year of reductions. So we've reduced positions, we've reduced contracts, which means work has shifted, work has changed, and we're coming with these new classifications as people are working either in a different light or there is a need and a position is vacant for the new position to work slightly different than the one did before. And that's why these are up for your consideration. Option C has the same things we talked about in option B in terms of the current year allocations, but instead of splitting the money between the general fund for the deficit funding and the capital reserve, it pulls all the dollars into the capital reserve and fully allocates, all plans fully allocate the $74.5 million. This plan has check marks across all the areas as it's looking at one-time funds with ongoing benefits, one-time funds, hold for future use, and limiting our ongoing expenses, as we're only requesting $353,000 or so as an ongoing number. That concludes my presentation, and Jonathan and I are available should you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Alfaro and Manager Jonathan. Council member questions for staff. Each of us can get 5 minutes to ask questions. And I'm not seeing any lights as yet. Councilmember Chow, you go 5 minutes, please.
Yeah. So, for I think from the attachment A, I see that the staff has 4 categories of things to be considered. I'll share that. So, restoring community benefits. I think the comment in the report is we cut all the benefits except one, and that's not being considered today. And we reduced a lot of services, and that's not being considered today. And then investing in employees, except the investment to the Pro Fund, the other investment like in terms of training and development does not seem to be considered today either. I see most of the things that I see is in the enhancement category, which are new funding requests, not restore the budget reaction. And among the new funding requests, we were saying that allocate one-time for one-time use, but then there are 353,000 that's ongoing. So it seems the information is a little conflicting. And also this once allocated, this is money will be spent because it will be in the budget. So it's not like we are not spending any money. Once it's allocated, it will be spent, right?
I'll take that question. So are you asking if whether or not if the council approves an option today, the money will be spent tomorrow?
Not tomorrow, but it will be allocated so that it will be spent by the end of the year.
That is correct. That will be budgeted into the quarter one.
So it was. So your earlier comment wasn't entirely accurate, and also we are allocating some one-time money to.
It will be allocated, but it's not spent.
But will be spent by the end of the year.
That would go
it's allocated.
Okay. Along that line, then the entire budget will be spent.
No, if you put that in the capital reserve, that's not spent because
Understood.
It's not allocated. If you put in deficit reserve, that's not spent.
Understood.
Okay. I'll reserve the rest of my time.
Councilmember Moore.
Thank you. I'll wait for the timer to reset. So looking back at the chart that you have that showed inflation versus the investment, you're making some different assumptions. So I see 4.15%, for instance, for a 100%. Okay, could please mute yourself? I see 4.15% for the 100% U.S. Treasury securities money market fund right now, and inflation showing at 2.6%. So right now we actually have a window where we're able to invest and do better than inflation currently. Of course, that situation can change. So I just wanted to mention that. I do have some concern regarding the grant analyst. I like the idea. I can certainly see the need moving forward. I'm concerned about two things. One, referring to it as like a 3-year limited term. I think that we're probably going to need grant support ongoing. And I think 3 years is, we're looking at a short window. But then when we look at attachment E, it says that the position is expected to be funded via a donation, and it doesn't say who the donation is from, what their motivation is, what they're going to be interested in having grants looked at specifically. And so for me, given that it's $132,000, I would prefer that that money was funded elsewhere. Could you provide some more information about why it's would be funded by a donation rather than from the city's own revenue?
I'll take that one. Thank you, Councilmember Moore. Just kind of before I answer that question, and correct me if I'm wrong, so you're absolutely right, Councilmember Moore, the current interest rate is high. But as Christina showed in the chart, historically, that will taper it off.
Thank you. Can you please stick to because I'm on the clock, to the donation?
So the donations through this year's budget process, we've heard loud and clear from council to look for other resource, to look for other funding resource.
Can you tell me who the donor is?
We don't know.
So why are you assuming that there would be a
We've
donation?
We've heard from the community members that some might be available, but we don't have anything in writing.
Okay, so I would want to mention that during my prep session, I was told for privacy reasons I could not be told who it is. So that seemed to me to indicate that you already had identified a potential donor. So I'm very concerned about this. Okay. I wouldn't want to have an anonymous donor funding a position for the city.
Understood.
Thank you.
Am I understanding that you would like funding to be allocated?
I want to retain the rest of my time. Thank you.
Councilmember Wei, you have your hand up.
Yes, my question is, are there any allocations that will be saved operation cost?
I'm sorry, Councilmember Wei, can you say your question one more time?
Yeah, my question is, are there any plans to save operation cost?
Operation cost. Christina, is there any?
I'm not quite sure I understand the question, but I'm going to try to answer it based on what I think is being asked. So I think what we're looking at in terms of operational cost potential savings, the CalPERS payment, the one-time payment would result in some operational costs, help offset our structural deficit. The new ERP also has that potential if we're able to do away with some other software systems that we've had to buy because our current ERP doesn't meet that need. So I think those are two that kind of off the top of my head that should result in operational savings, if I think that was the question you were asking.
Does that answer your question, Councilmember Wei?
Thank you. I think it would be great to invest into something we can save the city on the daily operation cost.
Okay. Vice Mayor Fruin?
For the sake of everyone, if they go to attachment E, I think the easiest line to examine in order to cross-reference what is intended to help us save money and what is otherwise just an enhancement is to look at the second column, the guiding principle that is described for each one of the line items. And I will point out specifically something that I think is getting lost here slightly, which is that the single largest item in that is the one-time funds with long-term efficiencies, and it is the one-time payment to CalPERS retirement system for $10 million. It is almost the entirety of what we're talking about here. Everything else is considerably smaller, and I think that they're all very well positioned in order to help us to save money in the long run. So I think this is a very thoughtful examination of what we should be doing at this point without overcommitting us, either this council or a future one, in terms of where we would be putting money. So I want to thank you for having really spent a lot of brain power on what's going to ultimately help us with our effort at trying to mitigate our structural deficit going forward. Thank you. I'll reserve the rest of my time.
Councilmember Chow.
So I think let me share my screen. So this is attachment E. I think every item here is a new budget request in a Q1 update. And you have one-time cost for acquisition of a new system. And the grant analyst was mentioned before, a new classification of code enforcement supervisor, a new classification of senior business, and then you have citywide classification of compensation study, yet another study for 200,000. I think we heard from many people we are doing too many studies. And you have consultant just to draft training presentations. And here is an odd thing that we will be doing 5 city-sponsored events for $5,000 when we actually have reduced a lot of other events that have been popular. And then we have this request that would be electrifying 24 doors, adding access control readers. That shouldn't be something that we do a Q1 request for. It's not, yeah. And then here is another analysis for a study, likely will be another consultant to do for $66,000. So I don't understand why we need to do this in Q1. It seems the process, why couldn't we, it seems it's good to start with this, but we should also consider those we have removed, and then come back like the process we had. So why are we do we need this in a Q1 update?
So these are not I'm sorry, through the
and
mayor.
these are allocation. That means once we allocate, it will be spent by the end of the year.
That's correct. But these are not part of Q1 ask. These are part of the allocation options for you to consider if you don't feel comfortable.
So why couldn't we do this as part of the budget for
next year?
Next year.
We can certainly bring it back.
Too, right?
Yes, certainly.
Okay.
So my question was for option B. 31 million would be put into the capital reserve, and
That's correct.
What's that?
That's correct. Yeah.
And no decision is being made as to the exact nature of the capital reserve item. So it's just money that we're taking that 75 million, putting 31 million into the capital reserve, putting another 31 million into this separate account that you are indicating, which is called the deficit funding reserve, which is exclusively meant to draw funds from in the event of a deficit budget or deficit funding. And then the third component is the 11.3 for one time, and 353,000, which is the other component of the spending. So these items that you have listed are what? Your recommendations on how to spend the 12 million.
I'll take that question. So I think this is following up on Councilmember Chow's questions. So we did not make these recommendations as part of the prior budget request because we didn't have money. Right. These actually were, most of them were included in the adopted budget as unfunded needs. Right. The ERP, for instance, has been a great need for the city to adopt, but we were short of money, so we put it off. Other items, the studies that Councilmember Chow mentioned, were needs that kind of occurred since the budget has been adopted. The positions, other than the grant management position, are what I call the add and delete. So we have those positions, but we're tweaking it and making it into a new classification. We're recommending to add additional position other than a one-time 3-year limited term grants administrator. So I hope that kind of answers your question.
Yeah.
And really, the reason we didn't ask in June is because we knew that we didn't have the resource to support that.
Okay, so these items are from a list of unfunded items for this current fiscal year.
Some of them are, not all of the items. We did include, there's a
Which ones are not?
That calls out if this was included as an unfunded need, either in fiscal year 24 or 25. It's the very last column of attachment E.
Mm. Okay. Okay, I'll hold my time now. Thank you. Councilmember Moore?
Thank you. Could I have a quick response for what you mean by unfunded need in the yes or no column?
Yes. So as part of our both of our final budgets for fiscal year 24 and the current fiscal year 25, we asked departments to identify anything that they might have asked for had there been money that was a need that they saw present, and we presented that list as an unfunded needs list. So it means it's something we would like to do, but we don't have the money for. So that's part of what we asked departments to look back at and see if there was anything there they'd still like to bring for council's consideration.
Okay, and were the fireworks mentioned to bring that back for the 4th of July?
The fireworks were not mentioned. Those were specifically an item that was taken off by council. The unfunded met needs were meant to be things that would have likely been a budget ask by department staff, but they did not make that ask because there weren't sufficient funds available.
Okay, but there are now. So when I look at the $769,000 for the ERP system, generally what it's looked like for this in the past is that we've had an ongoing cost. So this might be like a one-time charge, but then we're going to have the annual fees and assistance, coaching, if you will, for this. So while this looks like a one-time cost, it actually is going to have an ongoing charge to us. And I think of that when I look at the you're kind of promoting some individuals, the senior business systems analyst. So that's 17,000. It might sound like a small number, but that's going to be an ongoing charge. So when you have these new positions opening up, it is not one-time funds for a one-time purpose. It is an ongoing purpose. So I think it's a little bit kind of misrepresenting what's going on there when we're doing that. And also with the grants analyst position, I like the idea that you're adding it, but like I said before, it's going to be I think it'll be an ongoing position, and the donation part is a real sticking point for me with regards to transparency.
And if I may just respond to a couple of those, that's okay. That you are correct, Councilmember Moore, that there are ongoing costs related to the purchase of the ERP. In Attachment E, we did list that to say we're only asking for now a one-time cost. However, that there will likely be ongoing costs as the new system will have likely higher ongoing software costs, and then also that there's a potential to ask for limited-term staff to assist the Administrative Services Department in implementing the system as well. So we did want to put that in Attachment E so you were aware that there will still some ongoing costs attached to that. Secondly, we did list the additional costs for the classifications in the ongoing allocation column to say that those, to try to be clear and transparent that those are ongoing costs.
Thank you, and I do see the value of the ERP. I don't want us to have buyer's remorse.
I just wanted a quick clarification. The ERP costs, while ongoing, we are incurring ongoing costs right now for the current system, right?
Correct, but based
so
on
one will offset the other.
There's still likely to be an additional charge above what we're
because it's a new system. Yeah. Okay. Seeing no other comments, let's go to the public comments on this item. Madam City Clerk.
Yes, Mayor, I currently have one card requesting to speak on this item. I see 2 hands raised virtually.
Okay.
So 3 total.
Is there one here in person?
Yes, one person in Community Hall.
Oh, okay.
So,
3 minutes per speaker.
Sujatha Venkatraman, welcome.
Thank you very much. Sujatha Venkatraman, Executive Director, West Valley Community Service. Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council Member, and City Manager. I'd like to start with thank you so much for this wonderful partnership. West Valley and the City of Cupertino have been working together for many years. We are 50 years now, and the city will be soon 75 years. So we thank this partnership. You may wonder why I'm here. I'm here to advocate while you're thinking about these scenarios to see West Valley Community Services in there. because we are an ongoing benefit. We are a community benefit. We are supporting the residents who are low income, especially the housed community. We serve nearly 4,500, and a quarter of that are Cupertino resident. The services we offer is preventing eviction. The services we offer is keeping our seniors aging in their home. The services we offer is preventing homelessness. So while you consider this, think of this as ongoing benefits. Think of these as safety net or community benefits that in the long term benefits our residents. So if you invest now, these have positive outcomes. So I want you to consider that. The second is West Valley Community Services in Cupertino's funding system has always fallen under CDBG funding, which has always fluctuated. This year, in the beginning of the year, we were told we will get $10,000, and this is for our housed resident. That is, that with $10,000, which we eventually got $17,000 because of the money that came in, but it's not in a dedicated funding stream. And we are providing services to nearly 300 households on a weekly basis. Last year, we prevented 100 households from getting evicted. So I want you to, as you're thinking of these scenarios, to see if we can be in a dedicated funding stream. Other West Valley cities have us in dedicated funding streams for our safety net services. So I want you to think about that and see if you can reconsider and see us. This will really help us not to keep changing our budget and try to look at other funding sources. So with that said, I feel like somewhere we fit in an option B. So I'm hoping you will consider that and hoping to see a community-based organization in this planning. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sujata.
I had a quick question for you, Sujata. You also, West Valley Community Services gets funding through our grant process, right? Community grants?
So we get the CDBG money. We get for the unhoused program that we run, which is Haven to Home, we do get that through the grants program. And we do apply for community benefits, but that got reduced this year. But what I'm saying is for the safety net services that comes out of CDBG is our core service, and that always has fluctuated for us. So I'm hoping we can be in a dedicated funding stream, which doesn't fluctuate the way CDBG funding fluctuates.
Thank you.
I hope that answers your question.
Mayor, can I ask?
Councilmember Chow, quick question.
So how much you need for safety net a year?
If how much I need?
For safety net program.
So if I look at comparative budgets that other cities provide, 75,000 for if I look at the percentage for safety net services, and that will help us provide the service.
How much you are getting from CDBG?
Right now for the housed community for safety net services, 17,000.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Next speaker.
Yes, Mayor, we have two hands raised virtually, Rhoda Fry and San R.
Okay.
Welcome, Rhoda.
Hi, good evening. In the past, we were getting about $27 million a year net sales tax revenue. We're going to be going down to about 10. So that means we need to save about 17 million a year. We're not going to get this money back. It's not going to, it's just not going to happen. I sent you in my communication today a quote that was in the 2006 budget. Even as far as back as 2006 or even further back, the city knew that this deal with Apple might go away. And having talked with folks on staff, the idea back in the day had been to, I'm going to call it an endowment, to create an endowment that we would be able to live off the interest. So if we take this money and we start to kind of grab it every year, eventually it's going to disappear. And, you know, if you can compare it to a person, right? If you're retired and you're setting money aside for your retirement and you spend it down and then you die, that's okay. But the city isn't going to die. We don't want the city to die. We want the city to continue flourishing. And the way to do that is to put the money away and get it in interest and live off the interest. I sent you some charts. They didn't quite make it into your packets. But in there, there's some links, and you can go to CDTFA and play around. And so, for instance, if you compare Cupertino's historical net sales tax revenue with that of Los Altos per capita, all right? Cupertino was getting 9 times more sales tax revenue. And the other thing that we have with Cupertino is we're not getting an awful lot of property tax revenue compared to our neighboring cities. So the sales tax revenues be really important, but there's no way we're going to get it back. It just isn't going to happen. No matter how many Costco's, Ikeas, any of that stuff that we put in the city, it's just not going to happen. For every $100 spent on goods in the state of California online on Apple goods, Cupertino got 65 cents. It's just, this is one-time money. We need to be very, very, very careful with it. We've managed to put this money away for many, many months with the potential of knowing that we were going to give it back. So let's just please take a breather. Let's keep on putting it away. Let's put it in an economics uncertainty fund and really be very careful about what we spend. As you know, I was really taken back by what I was seeing in accounts payable. We're spending money on swag. We shouldn't be doing that. Please, let's watch our dollars and our pennies. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Rhoda. Next we have San R, followed by Lisa. Welcome, San.
Good evening, Mayor Mohan and council members. I would agree with the previous speaker. I think that we need to be extremely careful in understanding what our run rate is going to be with the change in the incoming revenue from the loss of the Apple sales tax. And I would urge us to not look for ways to allocate or set these funds aside in a reserve where they can start to get drawn down. I would urge you to rename the current reserve as an economic uncertainty reserve and have these funds invested in T-bills or bonds that yield 4%, 4 to 4.5%, and let us look at ways that we are frugal and responsible with our money. I also want to say now is not the time for this council to be making calls on the cusp of a change in council. We're probably 2 meetings away from a change in council, and it really alarms me that the agenda is packed with 15 consent calendar items, this being a sole action calendar item where we're trying to get so much through. There is no rush. There is absolutely no rush. And we need to just take our time and not make these decisions in a haste. And please respect the will of the voters. They have made a decision. They have made a mandate. And let us respect that and allow the incoming council that may have a different majority to deliberate on this matter and give them the opportunity to define what the responsible use of funds should be. That would also show your respect to the voters who some of you will face in 2 years. And I think it behooves all of us to be humble enough to give voters the chance to have their mandate be reflected in major decisions like this. This meeting alone is dealing with at least $100 million of taxpayer money. And 2 meetings away from a council change, I don't think we should be going through $100 million of allocation or set aside decisions. So I would request you to either continue this item to allow the incoming council to deliberate on it, or to rename this reserve as an economic uncertainty reserve and invest it in T-bills and bonds, which is the responsible thing to do. Under no circumstances would I want to see option B or option C. The money should not be spent hastily, impetuously, 2 meetings away from council change and a potential majority change. So please do not, under any circumstances, go with option B or C, where we're going to spend this on staff items as we have seen some of those items. We do not want to see that spent. There are many other places where community services have been lost and those need to be restored. I'm not advocating for option A either, because that will once again start to get drawn down. So let us keep this, let us rename it, and let us invest it in T-bills and bonds. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Next we have Lisa. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. So I appreciate the report and the information. I would also appreciate slowing down, as I appreciate what everything Rhoda said, and clear-minded way that we need to think about how long the money sat there and what it was what it was sitting for and not just rush into decisions. I honestly think this should be a study session before it comes to a vote, but that's my opinion. I know people will agree and disagree, so just please don't rush into stuff like so often happens when it's money that we will never get again. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Mayor, no further requests to speak on this item?
Okay. Okay, so that ends the public comments for this item. I would like to bring it back to council with a motion for deliberation purposes. And then we can deliberate further after we get the motion. Is there a motion to hang on.
Okay.
Councilmember Chow.
I'd like to make a motion for option A and to do nothing tonight and bring the item back in January to consider budget allocations holistically in every area, including the areas we've made the reduction last year and any area that we might need a new allocation, as we have done in January with a study session in January, and the council and the public can think about it and then come back then revisit the item in a few meetings before the final budget adoption in June.
Okay, is there a second for Councilmember Chow's motion, which is to go with option A?
Moore, second.
I'll second that.
Okay. Okay. All right. Councilmember Wei, you're seconding option A?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So do we do a vote or do we discuss? We can discuss. Councilmember Moore, you had your light on. Was it just for seconding purposes?
Yeah, I'll start with that. But I do appreciate the idea, the concept that we're going to bring this back and have some more discussion about it because it is really important. And there were a number of items within the options B and C that we need to really have some lengthy discussion about before just jumping into it. Also, with regards to the CalPERS funding, the $10 million for CalPERS, we need more information about that with regards to the 115 trust that we have as well, so that the public knows more about it, the council knows more about it, and we understand what we're trying to do there. And also with regards to the ERP, because that was a very large spend, what we would get out of that, more information would be helpful. And with regards to the new positions, the grant one in particular, since the suggestion was to do a 3-year short term, I'm wondering if that, when it does come back, if we can be having a discussion about whether a contract service is more optimal or having an on-site staff person is better. When I read the jobs description about that, I was a little concerned about the amount of qualifications which were being asked for, and whether or not, if you had a contractor who was specifically doing grants, would that potentially be wiser, especially since you were looking at a 3-year horizon. So I really appreciate the motion and the second, and I support that. Thank you.
I had a question about the option A. If we take the 75 million and basically leave it the way it is now, what are we not limited by government finance GFOA regulations about the amount of interest we can get and the amount of money that we can invest
There isn't necessarily a limit by GFOA. They make a recommendation on reserves that cities should keep on hand, almost like a rainy day fund. We meet that reserve with our current economic uncertainty reserve. I think what we're looking at more is weighing doing something with the money if it benefits the community versus holding on to it over the long term, is what would really look at council to weigh at if they want to use the dollars or not.
Okay. Sorry, Councilmember Chow.
Yeah,
you go ahead then.
I'd like to say that appreciate the staff for bringing us options, and and you prepared a lot of detailed reasoning for them. Appreciate that, and I think some of them actually make sense. And it's just, it's better if we have a holistic discussion, study session first. For example, the allocation to the CIP, because I think in the past 2 years, we have withheld the regular allocation we make to the CIP reserve. So replenishing that makes sense. As for how much, I'm not sure how much we had. If it had been normal years, how much we would have allocated in the past. If we had some information on that, that can help justify how much we should replenish in the CIP reserve. And then I think the CalPERS 10 million seems to make sense also, but I would also want to be sure that putting 10 million in CalPER is better than keeping our investment profile. Then likely that is true, but if we can have more concrete information, that would be better. And some of the funding requests, the new funding requests, some maybe make sense, but still it would be great if this is a study session and people can come, and we cut some events last time and now we are adding new events. It seems to be unfair to not consider those events that were cut also at the same time. So yeah, and possibly before January, like West Valley Community Service can also make requests for something for the city to consider in investment. That will be also a new appropriation that we can then consider everything together and see how we want to. We have a little bit more, not a lot every year, and how we can have better, a smoother landing for our structural deficit. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Fruin?
Just two questions for you, mostly about timing. Is there any particular benefit to doing the ADP payment now, before the end of the year, versus sometime after the beginning of January?
There's no particular reason why you would want to hold on to it now or pay it now versus later. It's just the potential earnings that CalPERS could make off of that ADP, which currently is at about 6.9% is what their projected or target rate is, which is a bit higher than what the city can currently receive.
Got it. And then the same for the ERP for the human resources software.
For the ERP, it's just the timing in terms of when we would go out for RFP, bringing on, implementing. So it's a long process to go through. I know one of the questions was we need more information in the ERP. We actually don't know until we know we can go out and see what systems are out there, and we can't really do that without having a funding allocation.
Got it. Is there a best guess you can give us as to whether a 2-month difference is going to be problematic for you?
So yes, because we generally look at for a when we're implementing an HR system, we try to do it at the beginning of a calendar year because a lot of our benefits run on the calendar year. when we're looking at the financial system, we want to, as much as we can, try to implement on July 1st, so we have a whole fiscal year to go in. We're just doing some rough timelines, assuming the whole RFP process and selection and contract negotiation would take about 6 months. We'd be looking at least a year to implement the software. We'd likely, maybe we'd have a little bit of wiggle room. Finance would go first, so maybe looking at July of 2026 to go live with the finance system, and likely January of 2027 to go live with HR. So the only issue with delaying it is we don't know when Tyler, who is our current software provider, would stop servicing our software.
Got it. Okay. If there were any ask that you would like to preserve from this, is that one that you would?
I think I'll defer that to City Manager Wu.
Okay.
At this point, we don't have any recommendation, but these are the leanest recommendation that we would like to ask for council. Then again, it's totally council's discretion if council doesn't feel comfortable approving any of it.
My thinking on this is that at least the CalPERS, the ADP, makes sense to fund it now as opposed to later. It is something that that will benefit us almost right away. So I don't see the need to postpone that, because what we are doing is almost we are realizing a savings almost right away by putting in that extra funding into the CalPERS. So we don't have any discretion on how much to pay CalPERS. We pay what we pay what they ask us to pay, right?
So the way I understand the UAL payment is almost like your mortgage.
Yeah.
So if you pay towards your principal, then you get less interest. So over the long term, that will be an ongoing saving for the city. Then again, I would put this discretion back to council. If council believes that putting the money in the saving to earn interest will be a better option, we certainly will follow that.
So just getting back to that, it's not, if we had the money, we should be funding CalPERS, because that's an ongoing cost. That's a cost or an expense that we have no discretion over. And loading $10 million into the CalPERS account yields an immediate savings.
That's correct. So I will say we do have a normal cost payment and a UAL payment annually that we're required to make to CalPERS. CalPERS tells us what those amounts need to be, either via percentage or flat dollar amount. We do have discretion if we wanted to make this additional discretionary payment.
Okay, so when we do, then our annual payment to PERS will come down.
Correct. And so if council were to move forward with that, we could take that and work that into an updated forecast for mid-year. If we don't have that direction moving forward, we couldn't build it into the forecast, so to speak. We couldn't show it that it was actually in there. We'd have to show it almost like a below the line. If you were to move forward with this, similar to what is in the staff report today, here's what that looked like. Our goal with bringing it forward today is we could come back at mid-year with a better long-term forecast, taking some of these impacts into consideration.
Okay, so there's no specific time that this needs to be done.
No, but again, as Finance Manager Orozco mentioned, it's timing, right? So right now, CalPERS is earning a bit more than we are in our investments. Putting that dollar over there would have an additional gain. But we can also, as council member, as City Manager Wu mentioned, we could also, if council chooses not to, is not make the payment.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Moore?
And this is also why I think this needs to come back in January and have more discussion about it, because we need to go over what happens when the CalPERS rates go down, and what kind of financial hit do we end up taking there. We need to understand that part, and then also how the decision for 10 million was arrived at. Do we want to do 5 million? Do we want to do something else with what we have in LAIF? Is there some flexibility that we have with those funds? And should should they be moved or not? So I think there's a lot to talk about rather than moving something kind of hastily right now, and that we and the new council need to be educated about these items. Thank you.
Councilmember Chow. Oh, sorry.
Through the Mayor, if I can ask Director a follow-up question. So if the council were to pick option B today, we can certainly bring back additional conversation to council in January for further modification. Is that correct?
That's correct. As I mentioned earlier, all options hold a large portion of the money in some sort of reserve. Only 11.7 million is in attachment E for potential spending. So the large majority of the money is still available if we wanted to. Council's direction was to move for different funding sources. There's still several $1 million available to do so.
Thank you. I just want to make a clarification that even though it seems like there's a decision to be made tonight, in January, February, March, under council's direction, we can always bring the item back.
Okay, just one point. So the difference really between, say, option A and option B is 11 million.
11.7.
Instead of putting it in one bucket, in option B, we are sort of splitting it between two.
Correct. You have the 11.7 million you would allocate, and then splitting the 68 million, 31 million to the capital reserve, 31 million staying in the general fund and a new reserve for deficit spending.
Right, and so it's just basically names of accounts. They're all general fund.
Yeah. So 31 million would still stay in the general fund. I think that was that the question? Sorry.
The 31 for the deficit funding reserve, and the 31 approximately for the capital reserve. They're all general fund monies.
The capital reserve would go into the capital reserve fund, so a different fund, but the 31 million for the deficit funding would stay in the general fund. So what we need to do is move the money over to the capital reserve. That shows revenue to the capital reserve. I want to make that clear that it's not, they don't get an appropriation, they don't get an allocation, they get a revenue into that reserve. That allows then our public works team to look at those dollars along with what they currently have left in the capital reserve and bring a long-term plan to council for their consideration.
Okay, good. Councilmember Moore?
Okay, thank you. I just thinking in interest of time, we have 4 more agenda items to go over, and we do have consensus on option A, so it would be my preference if the question was called.
Okay, that's a good idea. If
Can
Councilmember
I make a
Chow?
comment? I have raised my light was on for quite a while before.
Okay, please go ahead.
So I think it wasn't. With option B, the 11.3 million will be allocated today. That means we cannot unallocate them in January, right?
You could still unallocate them.
But then once it's allocated, it's very rarely unlikely we can say stop the project in January. So it's allocation. Especially it's additional allocation, and especially there are items we have never seen before, like the events on the DEI something. I don't know what's that, but it's unfair when we have cut other events that we were not considering today, and now we are adding new, and also that it also includes a classification system that I actually consulted with someone who has been city manager for many years, for a lifetime, and she said that kind of classification is usually done in-house every year. Hiring a consultant, I'm very concerned about this extra spending. So if we are sure about CalPER, so you said CalPER is earning a bit more than our investment. How much more?
Currently, their projected or target rate is 6.9%, whereas the city's treasury and agency returns or benchmark is at 2.7, I believe, or 2.1. And just for reference, LAIF is currently making 4%, but that is just a snapshot in time.
No, levy is not a long-term investment, so that's not a good comparison. So what's the long-term investment, like 5 years?
Are you just asking currently or on average? Because on average, it's less than 3%.
Okay, so yeah, and it's just a delay of 2 months. But I'm not sure. I'm willing to consider an amendment of investing $10 million to CalPERS.
Okay, so
I'm choosing to trust the staff. I hope to get more confirmed number later. So
are you going with the substitute motion?
I believe Councilmember
I'll
Chung.
amend my motion.
Okay.
For option A, but we allocate $10 million for CalPERS. And then the rest, keep it as is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Second that.
Hang Wei.
Sorry, I cut you off.
Councilmember Wei.
Oh, Hung was the, sorry.
So Councilmember Moore was
Councilmember Wei.
seconder.
I'll second the amendment.
Okay.
Mayor, actually, Councilmember Moore is recorded as the seconder.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Councilmember Moore. You are the seconder.
I don't accept the motion. I think we need to have more study on it. I don't. And I would like to hear what the new council member has to say about the matter. I think that's very important to wait for them to weigh in on it. Either person who's going to be there has a great deal of experience, and I would like to hear from them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's fair to them as well.
And I would like to learn more data, but I think for this, I'm trusting the staff on this one. Then I can make a substitute motion. That's option A with $10 million for CalPERS. So could I have a second?
Is there a second for the substitute motion?
I'll second the substitute.
Okay, so we, Councilmember Moore, you had a comment?
Yes, I'd like to hear from staff about what has historically happened with CalPERS when their interest rates have gone down, what the impact has been on the city. It seemed like some of those downturns have actually been what caused the city to have to form their own, inspired the city to create their own accounts. And so what happens in a down market for the city, because these interest rates are probably going to be coming down.
So we never know what CalPERS rate of return are, but last year they had over 9%. So they have their peaks, and yes, they do have years where they don't meet that peak, or in some years they actually make a negative return, right? But then again, there's years that you have 20% return like they did a couple years ago, but over the long haul, their projection still stays at 6.9%. They have decreased that over the years, and so currently it's still at 6.9, and they do have experts and actuaries that refine that number. And currently, I think that is a reasonable number to assume that is the long-term rate they will be receiving.
Okay, and so why did the city then, if it's doing so well, if CalPERS is doing so well, why did the city put aside funds? And can you remind me what the dollar amount is that we have set aside?
I'll let Jonathan look up that amount. We created the fund not only for interest fluctuations in terms of CalPERS, what they're earning. Some of the biggest impacts for our retirement rates have been changes in assumptions. So people are going to live longer, right? Often people get sick. So looking at that, those assumption changes has been some of the biggest impacts that it has had to CalPERS. The rates have had an impact, but CalPERS has also put in additional measures. They have a 5-year smoothing on any either where they exceed their earning, where they exceed their interest rate of return they expect to get, to smooth that in, so to kind of limit for what, in terms of the impacts are to the city. The purpose of the 115 trust was first and foremost, the city would retain, at that time it was very important for the city to retain control over the investments. The 115 trust allows the city to invest the money at a greater return than what our regular investments are, because we restrict the money. So it doesn't come without a trade-off, right? So we can't just simply take those dollars out for any purpose. We'd still need to use them toward pension. It was also meant to be used as a potential smoothing fund, which became more important during our structural deficit. So right now we have plans based on CalPERS projections. We have certain rates planned. If something happens for whatever reason, there's an assumption change and those rates fluctuate, they wouldn't currently impact our operating budget. What we would look to do if that were to happen is we'd pull from the 115 trust to smooth it out. And lastly, what we intended to do is to have enough balance in the 115 trust that together with what we have in CalPERS to reach an 85% funded status, which is what's considered kind of the ideal place where you want to be when it comes to your pension. You don't want to be 100 because there's always stuff that changes, it's going to fluctuate, right? But you also don't want to be approaching closer to, I think, the 50% range is where they really consider you're getting to almost an insolvent area for your retirement. So those are some of the reasons that 115 trust was created.
So adding the $10 million plus the city's account, what is our funded rate? What would you? So
if we included the 115.
So currently we have just shy of $23 million, and that's as of October 2024 in our investment portfolio with PARS. If you give me a brief moment, I can do it quick.
And then I would want to know how we compare to other cities as well.
We'd need to know which cities specifically.
And surrounding cities, Sunnyvale, Campbell.
Within the county. We can't pull, I mean, it would take us a little bit of time to pull it up. All of this is available on the CalPERS website. There's actuarials for each of the cities, which shows you their funded status. So it's not something we can easily pull up.
Because I think we should know if we are an outlier in doing this action. And that's kind of, when we talk about the kind of information we would want to see in January, that would be it. And I understand that, some of my council members are excited to go shift this money, but I don't feel like we are fully informed. And if it's such a great deal, why are we just doing 10 million? Why aren't you doing more? Or is less a smarter decision?
I think we're trying to balance out the needs, right? So not to putting all of our eggs in one basket, so to speak. We also know the city has aging infrastructure that needs to be repaired, right? We know we have a long list of unfunded CIP projects. We also heard that, hey, we still have a structural deficit. Why aren't you setting some money aside from that? And that's what we were trying to do, is provide more of a balanced approach versus putting too much in one particular area.
Okay.
Okay, let's get back to our motions. Councilmember Chow, let's quickly wrap this up.
And my original motion also included bring the item back in January to consider budget allocation holistically in every area, including the reduction we've made last year, so that we have a study session on that and go on. So that part remains.
Okay.
So the seconder agrees.
So that's not an addition, that is what you said, right?
I didn't, when I do the substitute motion, I didn't say that, so I'm, for the record.
Okay.
Would the seconder agree with that? Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so now we vote. Councilmember Moore.
Do we have any information for how this is going to make us compared with other cities? Combined with what we have within the city's investment, our PARS.
We can run that analysis and provide that to you. It's difficult to make that on the spot because you have to consider whether other cities have public safety, and there's other considerations we would have to assume, or other factors we would have to consider as part of the analysis. Okay.
So my concern is that we're making a decision somewhat blind without full information.
Okay, so
are we requesting a memo on the Pearl investment?
There's
answer the
a
questions.
substitute motion on the table, Councilmember Chow.
Yeah.
I
So-
mean, would the questions on the CalPERS be answered with a memo? Do you want that?
Yeah. I would expect so, right? Yes.
We can
Yes.
cover that in a memo.
Yeah. So I choose to trust the staff, but then I would like to verify. Of course, then with a memo, that would be great. Yeah.
Okay, so there's a substitute motion, and there's a second. We're doing a voice vote. Madam City Clerk.
Councilmember Chow?
Aye.
Councilmember Moore?
I need the data, so I've got to vote no.
Councilmember Wei?
Right.
Vice Mayor Fruin?
Aye.
Mayor Mohan?
Aye.
The substitute motion carries with Moore voting no.
Okay, thank you very much to staff for the excellent presentation. All right, let's go now to all the other items that were removed from the consent calendar. And I would actually, in case anyone's waiting to talk about item number 12, I was hoping we could start with item number 12. If it's okay with everyone?
Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah, I think from just a prioritization of urgency's perspective, I think staff would recommend that council reorder the items 12, 14, 15, 7.
Right. Okay.
So I think it'd be appropriate to make a motion to that effect if you'd like to do that.
So moved.
Moore, second.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So we have the order, right?
Mayor, would you like a roll call vote? Mayor, would
Pardon?
you like a roll call vote?
Yes, please.
Councilmember Chow?
Aye.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Wei?
We didn't hear you, Councilmember Wei. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Vice Mayor Fruin?
Aye.
Mayor Mohan?
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, so let's move to item number 12, which is a contract to Lifetime Services for the Sports Center instruction, court maintenance, and retail services at the Cupertino Sports Center for a total not to exceed amount of 24 million. Recommended action is we award a 10-year contract for not to exceed amount of 24 million, or a 5-year. The recommended action is to award a 10-year contract. Okay, and then the second recommended action is to authorize the city manager to execute the contract with Lifetime Activities. Okay, so let's go with a staff report, Madam City Manager.
We do not have a presentation, given that this is on the consent calendar, and we saw the amount of questions coming from the residents. So we went ahead and issued a supplemental memo last night. It has clarifying questions. There are recommendations for council to adopt a 10-year with a $500,000 donation from this particular vendor to, in the future, potentially convert the existing pickleball courts into additional pickleball courts with the elimination of one existing pickleball court. All that will be done through the CIP process. Perhaps it was not clearly delineated in the staff report, but we want to make sure that that is stressed out in the supplemental. So I hope that will answer most of Councilmember Chow's questions. If not, myself and the team, Jenny, Recreational Manager, and also Great Car Purchasing Manager, are here to answer your questions.
Yeah, so I had a question. You said all the items listed in the contract would be part of the CIP process.
The delineation of the courts, that will be part of the CIP process. That's correct.
Okay, so when the contract, I think in one of the documents, it talked about eliminating 2 pickleball courts and moving it.
I think it's converting to 3 existing and then relocating to a different location for 2 more.
And after having read that, I realized that it would be a a net addition of one.
Net reduction of one.
Net reduction of one pickleball court.
Correct.
Right. But you're saying there's further action that's needed before that can be implemented?
That is correct. As any of the CIP project, that process will come through council. And council can also provide that clear direction to staff when that specific court is being located. It will come back as part of the CIP process if it's not clearly delineated.
Okay.
So I guess I just clarified that I think the city manager is committing to bring the action back to council.
Okay,
it's not clear to me what council action would be required to do
okay.
this.
So just wanted to clarify, it's not a Lifetime Activities decision, it's our decision.
For the location of the pickleball court, but the contract is for you to review.
Yeah.
And I would emphasize that for the 10-year extension or 10-year contract renewal would come with a $500,000 donation. With the 5-year recommendation would not come with any additional donation.
Right. Okay. All right. Further discussion on the Lifetime Activities contract. Do we have to go to the public first, or?
If you want to, but I did have one question.
Okay, go ahead with your question.
Okay, I did have one question for staff in engaging in some back and forth with members of the public, explaining what the sort of commitment might be from Lifetime with regard to capital improvements. One of the things that wasn't 100% clear to me is what exactly would constitute, I think it was termed neighbor-friendly LED lighting in order to enable nighttime or evening play on courts 16, 17, and 18.
The neighbor-friendly lighting is that LED lights don't have to be as high as the old lights, and so they would be lower lights and not shine into the neighbors. And those courts would also still shut down at 8 p.m.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilmember Moore, you had a question for staff?
Yes. So I was trying to locate the contract, and I found an amendment, and I want to make sure that I have the right one. Amendment to Agreement 12-033 between the City of Cupertino and Lifetime Tennis. Can someone verify that this is the contract? And if so, the reason I bring that up is because this contract expired September 30th, 2024, when I believe the staff report is saying that we have till December, but it looks like it already expired. That's the first part. And then I'd like to understand, since at one point we were making 20% of the total annual revenue in the 2012, well, actually in the 2018 update, we ended up with 16% for our compensation, and now we're dropping down to 12%. And the July 3rd, 2018 meeting had some really good information in the attachments, including some back and forth between Lifetime Tennis and our former Parks and Recreation Director. And Lifetime Tennis was explaining in those emails about what their financial situation was like. And I'm wondering why we're having a continued decrease in the percentage, going down to now 12% from the 16 that we had. Was there some reason from Lifetime about that? And just as moving forward, when we see staff reports, I really appreciated the 2018 report describing Lifetime Tennis and what was going on. This report, I felt like I had to dig a bit too much into the contract to find out about the pickleball courts and the LED lighting, and I question of whether that's kind of are we veering into this being a project under CEQA because you've got a noise issue, noise and light, and you're kind of reusing the space. Should we have noticed to the residents that were there? And I mention that also because I walked near where the exterior pickleball courts are at Memorial Park. And what I noticed at the single-family home there was that when you have the solid wall and the of the home, it's an L-shaped home there, the sound just really reverberated in there. And if we haven't asked the neighbors if this is an acceptable change in use, I think we're being unfair to them. So has there been outreach to the neighbors about this new lighting and the courts? Have we done anything like that to let them know that this is in the works? Thank you.
I believe the last contract was 2018, and that did expire, and there was an amendment made for 6 months, and that amendment was, we asked for an additional 6 months so that we could do the RFP, to give us time to do it, and that does expire on December 31st. To answer your question about the pickleball and the sound first, there are currently 6 pickleball courts on courts a total 16, 17, and 18, which are right up against the commons, and these would move the pickleball courts farther away from them to the opposite corner. That's what's proposed in their contract.
Okay. Excuse me, may I have the number of the amended contract so that I can look it up?
I don't have that number right in front of me.
It's 12.
But I believe your 12 was the original.
It's 12-033, and I can send you the link right now.
Okay, so I have the one from 2018, which extended to June 30th, 2024. But what you're saying is that there was another amendment that happened for 6 months. So that would have been something that came to council. I should be able to see it in the 2024 agreements because we would have needed to agree to that amendment.
I'm looking at Greg, and Greg's shaking his head. Go ahead, Greg.
Yes.
So it's buried in 2012.
So the third amendment was issued in April 2024, and by way of the standard agreement, the city manager has the authority to extend an agreement without increasing the total compensation amount. So I believe that's the action that was taken. So in that case, it wouldn't have come before council specifically to extend the term of the agreement. If we would increase the compensation amount, I believe that's when the item would have been held or heard by council.
Okay, so are you saying this did? I couldn't quite follow you there. You're saying it did come to council or did not?
The extension for time did not come before council.
Okay, so I'm remembering correctly, and it looks like it was amendment number 3 in 2012. So just as a kind of a records issue, I had to go back to 2012 and go digging in order to find this. So if this actually happened in 2024, but you have to do quite a bit of sleuthing in order to find the record, which I would prefer that if you're amending something in 2024 that we can find it in 2024. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so are there any comments from the public on this item? Oh, sorry, Councilmember Wei.
So my question is, have there been any RFP out there? Because I know we have a long-term contract with lifetime tenants.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question, Councilmember Wei.
Do we do any RFP out there for other? Okay.
Yes.
What's the results of the RFP?
I believe there were 2 vendors responded, and Lifetime was one of them. And it's also stated in the staff report. So yes. There were RFP, and then our Lifetime responded.
Okay. Let me ask.
I have
you want to go
ask
ahead?
question?
Go ahead.
Yeah. So the RFP was issued in September, and but the last contract ended in June. Was there an earlier effort for RFP that was not answered?
I think Jenny mentioned, or Greg mentioned, that the contract was extended in April to the end of December.
So how come we didn't do the RFP earlier, way before the 5-year contract end?
I believe it was a timing issue, and we didn't have time to get it done before their contract ended.
Okay. And then I think the staff report mentioned that there were 2 bids, but unfortunately the RFP or the proposals from the 2 vendors were not included. So in the staff report, there were you mentioned that the other vendor did not know the city operation as well since it's a new vendor. So I wonder whether the staff has given them fair chance to meet with the staff to further understand the city operation, that they need the information in order to provide. Did the staff meet with the other vendor to provide, to give them information on the city operation?
Yes, there was a non-mandatory meeting before, at a certain time, I believe it was in September, I can't remember the date, and both vendors attended that meeting.
But then it seems the other vendor, what's the name?
Gorin Tennis. Gorin Tennis.
Gorin Tennis. Okay, so Gorin, I think their bid come in at a higher rate than the Lifetime, which is the good thing that we are doing an RFP so we can compare. And it seems after that, the city staff then proceeded to choose Lifetime with a lower revenue for the city, and then negotiated with them to raise the percentage from 10% to 12%. And then also offer this option of donation. I think we received an email from Goring that they were not offered the same opportunity to amend their contract. So have you offered the same opportunity for the other vendor?
So I will take that. I believe I saw the email from Groen this afternoon as well, and Greg Card actually looked into it. We offered the same opportunity, but Greg, would you please clarify some of the concerns that this vendor brought up?
Yeah, sure. I think it's important to start with the process. So the reason why, to your point, we issued a request for proposals to evaluate qualifications. Cost is a consideration when evaluating it, but it was only 10% of the overall consideration. So we were looking at things that were more relevant with regard to how they were going to provide classes, their experience doing it, the staff, the instructors, and so those weighted more heavily in the total evaluation with regard to the most qualified vendor. Once we determined who the most qualified vendor was, which in this situation was Lifetime Activities, we engaged in negotiations with them. The manager at Coverman led those negotiations, and that resulted in the determination or the idea that we could gain better value in a longer-term agreement with Lifetime Activities, and then of course that resulted in the contract that's before you. With regard to Gorin's claims or concerns, I would say the reality is that, while cost is always a consideration, again, in this case, and best practice, if you will, is not to consider cost as the highest weighted value, which is the reason why you go through a qualifications-based consideration. So we did factor in cost, and that was considered, but because they weren't selected as the highest rated proposer, our process dictates that we would first engage in consultant negotiations with that vendor. If those fail for any reason, then of course we have an opportunity to continue down the list at staff's discretion, provided that we have qualified vendors. So Gorin didn't have that opportunity because we didn't reach the position where we needed to adjust our negotiations and move to the next
The staff
vendor.
report says that they did not understand the city operation. Was there enough information in the RFP to provide them this information so that they have enough information to prepare their proposal?
I believe Jenny mentioned that there was a mandatory required meeting to go over all of the criteria with anybody that's interested in an RFP, and that's a standard practice for all RFP.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any public comments for this item?
Yes, Mayor, I have 5 requests to speak from within Community Hall, so a total of 15 minutes. I currently see no hands raised virtually.
Okay, all right, let's go with that.
Okay, so if you do wish to provide comments on this item, please have your hand raised virtually in the next 9 minutes or submit a blue speaker card in Community Hall. We have Randy Kunke, Vidya, Sri, Andrew Wu, and Sanar. Welcome, Randy.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to echo Councilperson Councilperson Moore's concern about the percentage of revenue that would be taken from this project. The next thing is that I'd like to address is the pickleball being moved away from the condominiums. Well, they may not like the sound, but there's a lot of other people who don't too. It's going to put it around the tennis courts, and that's really going to change the character. I know that I've walked into places that didn't have pickleball and then did like Bay Club. It changes the nature of the place. I like the current separation that we have, where there's kind of tennis on one side of the sports center, there's pickleball on another side of the sports center. I think that works well, and I wish we could keep that. The idea of creating, putting lights on the courts, that's a good idea. It's appealing to have more tennis courts available from the other side, but with the low light, they won't go to 10 p.m., it'll only go to 8 p.m. The longer term thing for me, though, is that it seems like this is kind of a Band-Aid. We convert some courts, it's like a zero-sum game. We're not talking about building more courts somewhere. We're robbing Peter to pay Paul, so to speak. The pickleball courts are more dense. That creates more demand on parking. I just really wish we could look at some longer term solutions where we could, build more resources for people to come and do the resource. The guy, Mr. Lynn, spoke earlier. I hope he gets his lines on the courts in the Memorial Park. But really, the best answer is we need more courts in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Next, we have Vidya, followed by Sri, followed by Andrew Wu, followed by Sanar. Welcome, Vidya.
Hi, good evening, everybody. As a Cupertino resident, also a member of the Sports Center, and as a very avid tennis enthusiast, I'm really concerned to see about the proposed changes to the tennis courts being converted to pickleball courts. And I'm not really convinced that we are gaining anything by way of tennis courts because of the lighting issues that have been mentioned. And the LED lights that are being promised, we don't really know, that they work for tennis very well, that we don't have them currently. And if they work so well, why aren't they already installed, and why aren't the pickleball players already using these lights? So it seems like an experimental thing. And I'm also concerned that this is sort of a way in which Court 9 and 10 will first get converted to pickleball, and then slowly Court 11 and 12 will all go to pickleball and will be reduced. We will have very reduced tennis court capacity at the Sports Center. So that concerns me greatly. And the other issue I'm also worried about is granting the 10-year contract to lifetime. And from what I've seen in other cities like Sunnyvale and Santa Clara, the facilities that are run currently by Lifetime are not great at all. They don't maintain courts very well, and compared to what we have at the Sports Center, they are not at the same level or quality. So I'm concerned that having a 10-year contract is going to bring down the character of the Sports Center from what it is currently. And I would suggest that any contract be taken, viewed a bit more critically, and even the RFP, as Councilmember Chow said, should have been sent out even earlier, so we could have probably solicited some more proposals from other vendors. And Gorin Academy is certainly very reputed, and they do contract with many other places, even at De Anza College, for instance. So I find it hard to believe that they are somehow not aware of how to work with cities. So if that can be revisited and also reassessed, I think that would be a good start, and also probably get some quotes from other vendors for a better deal for the city in terms of revenue. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Vidya. Next we have Sri, followed by Andrew Wu, followed by Sanar. Welcome, Sri.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am also a CSC member, a Cupertino resident, and an avid tennis enthusiast, although I'm right now injured and trying to get back to playing tennis. I am concerned about the proposal of converting, of moving these pickleball courts to take over court 9 and 10. I used to play, when I was not injured, every week tennis at court 9 and 10 are great courts for tennis. If they become pickleball courts, it will really dampen the experience, as Randy said, for other tennis players who all the tennis courts are on that side. And if the LED lighting was an option, why has that not been done? I think we should first sort of put this off and wait for install the LED lights and see what happens there. And there was it was mentioned that the residents' input has not been sought after, and that might be a concern. So I think perhaps the first thing to do is let's put LED lights in courts 15, 16, 17 and have them as dual use right now as pickleball and tennis, and then see how that goes, and then we can sort of maybe evaluate. And then I also wanted to add some things about lifetime 10-year contract. It seems like this donation of $500,000 is contingent on this sort of pickleball court, and I really worry about this privatization of something that should be cherished. I think I've mentioned this before. CSC is a very, very unique. It's something that Cupertino should be very proud of. It's a public-run facility that facilitates, sports and tennis and pickleball, and also with contract the current lifetime through and classes. And I think one of the concerns I had about this contract is that if Lifetime is going to be in charge of maintenance of the courts, and that's taking away from what the city is doing, that's really concerning, because we know the experience of Sunnyvale. When we play with Sunnyvale, their courts are cracked. Their maintenance is nothing like that. Their courts are dirty compared to Cupertino. Many Sunnyvale residents moved to Cupertino and became CSC members to play tennis in Cupertino because of the conditions in Lifetime. Lifetime and the court reservation system in Sunnyvale made it very prohibitive for tennis, whereas in Cupertino you have one membership and people can play tennis in peace. So I really do have some concerns about Lifetime's track record in other cities that should be considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Sri. Next we have Andrew Wu, followed by San R. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you, everyone. Allow me to speak here. I'm a resident of Cupertino for more than 2 decades. My kids growing up in Cupertino Sports Center. So, like Shira said, it's a very special place to me and to my family. I'm a huge tennis fan. Last weekend, my team represented Northern California, won the USDA National Championship. So just to show how much I love the tennis there. But at the same time, my grown up eldest son started playing pickleball as well. So I have both sides of a understanding of tennis and then pickleball. I support pickleball as a sports, but I echo what Randy is saying, that it's good to have a win-win situation. My eldest son took me to places. He plays the pickleball, for example, in Palo Alto, in San Jose. Both cities have dedicated locations and facility for pickleball. It's a great place for the pickleball players to gather together, to have their social. So I think that's a great idea. I heard that Cupertino will have a dedicated pickleball facility in Memorial Park. I hope that continue to be a plan. That is a win-win situation for the city, for the residents, and for the member of Cupertino Sports Center. And in that idea, in the same idea, I think it's a good idea to keep the pickleball in the same location as it is now. It has that dedicated location for the pickleball players. They have their own zone and they have their social cycle. It's a very good idea in my view, experience. I hope you guys can support that idea. And since the pickleball has already been there, I assume the due diligence, the hearing has been done before. That's the reason being approved. So I think that shouldn't be changed. There's no particular reason to change unless something else suddenly happened. So that's my input, and thank you guys for listening to me.
Thank you, Andrew. Next we have San R, and then we will move to those requesting to speak virtually. Welcome, San.
Good evening, council members and Mayor Mohan.
Firstly, let me just say I'm a CSE member, Cupertino voter. I'm a daily user of CSE. I'm a 40-year tennis player, so I've grown up playing tennis. I'm a parent of 2 tennis kids, and I'm also an ex-customer of both Gorin as well as Lifetime. So I've spent thousands of dollars on Lifetime for my kids, and I spent thousands of dollars at Gorin for my kids, and I have a chance to firsthand observe both of them. The first thing I want to say is, if the pickleball, I will start actually with the supplemental report. The supplemental report is misleading. Courts 16 to 18 are today tennis courts. They are not pickleball courts. They are tennis courts that are available for pickleball use when not being used for tennis. So I just want to clarify that. They are not pickleball courts. They are tennis courts that are used for pickleball when tennis is not being used. The second thing I want to say is, so it's not a net gain of 1 court, but it is actually a loss of 3 tennis courts that were used for tennis being replaced by 2 full-time pickleball courts. So there's misleading, misrepresenting statements in there, because 16 to 18 can be used for tennis and they're going away, and 9 and 10 were also usable for tennis and they're going away. So I just want to be clear on that. Now I want to make sure I use my time here. The contract for 5 years should be considered. 10 years is too long a period of time. Service declines over time, and when someone has a 10-year contract, the service quality will continue to decline. I have been a user at Santa Clara and Sunnyvale, and I've seen the quality of courts there. They're deeply cracked, they're not well maintained, and I do not recommend Lifetime. Gorin, on the other hand, they have professional players that have played at the college level. They have trained people that have gone to high school and college level players. Cupertino has a chance to produce college level tennis players. This is a great opportunity for Cupertino, with 18 courts, to not waste the space you have. Apply that to a good vendor that actually produces high quality talent that will bring Cupertino some name and fame. Gorin has players that are WTA level coaches. Their contract actually produces more revenue at 5 years. And Gorin operates academies today at Dianza College, at West Valley College, at King's Academy, at Las Lomas High School. They have courts, they have 18 courts at West Valley that they operate. So they run the program professionally. And I request council to please not make any decisions in haste. This RFP has been late as is. Let's give it some more time and consider this in full light. Thank you.
Thank you, San. And next we will move to those requesting to speak virtually. We have 4 requesters: Vitaly Gorin, Kaz Shin, Felix Katzman, and Lisa. Welcome, Vitaly.
Hello?
Yes, hello.
Hello? Hi. Yeah, thank you for giving me some time. I was just listening in. I have absolutely no issue if we lose the RFP, and if Lifetime proposes a better contract than us. Everything on an RFP is fair. There's a lot of things, honestly, we weren't told. No one reached out to us to negotiate, and this is the first time I hear that no one reached out to us because of our qualifications. And so it's a little bit hard for me to understand. We've been doing this for 30 years. Our director is a WTA former player and a coach from the WTA, which is the Women's Tennis Association, the Pro Tour. We have multiple coaches from the Pro Tour. We've produced an enormous amount of Division I scholarship kids. Multiple independent publications have listed us as top 10 academies in the world. So I'm a little bit confused, because this is the first time I heard that our qualifications and our ability to give a good product that didn't allow us to negotiate. As far as the proposal, we were never told we could increase percentages. We were just, when the RFP came out, it was just asking what kind of revenue we could create. We absolutely could have increased the percentage to the city. We could have increased also the donations to the city, but none of that was either solicited or we were even given a choice. The RFP had kind of, I would say, check boxes, check this, check that, and we filled them all out. And this is the first I've heard of a Lifetime being recommended for award, and that's okay. I mean, if we lose, we lose, but I would have at least liked to have, a fair shake, and, if I lose, at least on merit. That's all I had to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vitaly. Next we have Katz Shin, followed by Lisa, followed by Felix Katzman. Welcome, Kaz.
Hello. I would like to just voice my concern about the 10-year contract for Lifetime. And I'm also curious if the RFP for the other Gorin Academy, whether they had enough time to prepare and whatnot, because I actually have been playing at Cupertino Sports Center for over 20 years, about 20 years. And the quality of the coaches there is questionable. I have put my kids since they were 4, over 10 years. My kids took lessons there. Over the course of time, the quality of the coaches there has definitely been questionable. I know there's lots of still good coaches there. Well, honestly, not a lot, but I know there are some few good coaches there, but very questionable level of coaches. So not just from the money perspective, have you folks even looked into, are the coaches there, how qualified of a coach they are? That's one concern I have for Lifetime activities. So I am against a 10-year contract, maybe 5-year might be good. The other thing is, right now as a tennis player, we have to call in at 8 o'clock sharp, not calling, but go on the web at 8.00.00 and try to reserve a court. If we're losing 2 more courts, court 9 and 10, it's gonna even make it even challenging for the tennis player to get courts, especially for after 5 p.m. when people try to get off of work and try to play tennis. So losing 2 more courts will definitely impact the tennis players. So I just wanted to bring those 2 points. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaz. Next we have Lisa, followed by Felix Katzman. And those are the 2 that had their hands raised before the 9-minute cutoff. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. I'll be quick. I just noticed that there were a lot of letters sent in on this subject. A lot of concerns, some concerns that the length of the contract wasn't needed, various things. But I just hope that you all read the letters that came in, and I'm assuming there would have been more people speaking had this been known that it would be open and not a consent item, and that item 16 didn't go before this. So please don't discount the comments made in writing. And I just have one other comment that may have nothing to do with anything. However, with the solar plan for the city, I know that there's a plan for some solar over at Sports Center, and that it will include lighting. And I can't recall exactly where it is, and I am not a member of the Sports Center anymore, so I don't know where the lighting would collide, if it would be an issue with any other lighting for the residents that live next door. It may be a non-issue, but that is, there's something else going to be happening over there. So I maybe butted in where I shouldn't have, but I do hope that you consider the passionate residents when you're thinking about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. And our final speaker is Felix Katzman. Welcome, Felix.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, I'm part of the Gorin management team, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I just wanted to add that, of course, we respect the competition. It just we were surprised when it was concluded that we don't have enough experience. We have over 30 years of experience, and we're actually proud of the services we provide. So I just wanted to mention that we were not asked for any kind of clarification. There was no discussion, just that single non-mandatory meeting that we attended where we were just shown the facility. So yeah, again, we're just surprised that there was a conclusion that we don't know what the community and the municipality needs are. Of course, we respect the decision. Thank you very much. That's it.
Thank you, Felix. And Mayor, no additional requests to speak within the time limit.
All right. So that ends the public comments for the item number 12, which is related to the sports center. Let's sort of try and wrap this up. Can we get it back to council with a motion? Councilmember Chow?
Yeah, I have a motion.
3 minutes, please.
Okay, I'll propose a motion to get us started. I'd like to extend the current contract with Lifetime for another 6 months while we do another RFP to make it clear to the applicants that they could propose flexible options such as different percentage of revenue, one-time donation, or any other options they can propose. This is a competitive proposal. And more information on the city's operation and expectations so the applicants have enough information to respond as for their qualification. And more information on the quality of coaches that they have, for example, their minimum requirement for a coach, maybe likely they have different level of coaches. So I'd like to know what kind of coaches they have at high level, medium level, and beginner level.
So, just to comment on that motion, Mayor, if you may, before you request a seconder. So I think that council, it would be within council's authority to direct staff to explore negotiating an amendment to the contract. I'm not sure that the way this is negotiated, the way that this is noticed, that you could approve that amendment today. I would also say, with respect to the other commentary, I'm not sure that that would be consistent with our purchasing policy. We would have to go back and see whether we would need to do a new RFP if we were going to scrap this process and start over. And I don't know if Greg, I see Greg is might have something to say about that as well.
So just for clarification, Mr. City Attorney, you're suggesting, you're saying it's within our scope to amend?
You could direct staff to explore an amendment, depending on, I believe, just given the amount of this given this amount of this contract, if we increase the compensation, it would likely have to come back to council.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Councilmember Chow.
Okay.
1 minute, please.
So can we give direction to extend the current contract for 6 months today?
No.
No, so that's not. So we need to agendize for next meeting to do that. And then maybe give direction on what kind of RFP we would like to see.
Right. Well, we would. We'd have to have a willing county counterparty to extend the contract. But yes, assuming that we did.
Okay, and so then I will modify my motion to be let's reject. So my motion would be let's reject this proposal and bring the item back in the next meeting to extend the current contract for 6 months and consider revising the RFP, as I stated earlier, to have more information. And another reason I feel that we need to do that, this is not part of the motion, is this agenda packet doesn't have the RFP, doesn't have the two proposals, which I usually request and the Public Works usually provide. And they were not there. So a lot of the reasoning that's in the staff report, I couldn't verify the claims since there isn't enough information today.
Okay, so you made a motion?
The motion is to reject the current proposal and extend, can we, I'm not sure. Okay, so let me, we reject the current proposal and extend the current contract with, and direct the staff to bring back an item in the next meeting to consider extending the current contract with Lifetime for 6 months and consider revising RFP, as I stated earlier. Do I need to repeat that?
I believe I have it captured, Councilmember Chow.
Through the mayor, if I may, for clarification, our RFP languages are very similar. I would hate to have an RFP discussion on the dais with council. Not that I don't want to get council's direction, but we don't typically have an RFP development conversation on the dais. And I think the current contract will expire by the end of December. As Greg pointed out, I have the discretion to extend if the other party is willing to extend this for another 6 months.
So, can I respond? Ask.
Were you saying something? Go ahead,
Okay.
Councilmember Chow.
So I understand that this council doesn't need to review the RFP, but I suppose we can provide direction to staff on what we would like to see in RFP so that we do get the best qualified vendor for this.
Of course,
that
council
should be
can.
appropriate, right?
But I think what I was saying is that RFP has standard language.
I know, but for example, in COSD, when we consider vendors for qualification, we even were able to review the criteria used for ranking them. So that was also something we had discussed at the board meeting.
So you would like to see the RFP language coming back to you before we issue it?
No, I think we don't have to see it come back, but in the next meeting, I hope we have the current RFP, and then which has a criteria, right? And then so that we can see if we can make it more clear.
So you would like to see, I'm sorry.
I don't need, you don't need to, so that the council can make comment, give direction to staff. The staff doesn't have to bring the revised RFP back to the council. We don't have to approve the revised RFP.
So if I can ask for clarification, your motion is asking staff to bring the existing RFP back at the next meeting for you to make revision.
Yeah, provide direction to make it better quality, so we can discuss what's a better qualification.
So council can write the RFP on the dais?
No, not write, just give direction.
Okay, understood, thank you.
Councilmember Moore, we could quickly wrap this up in the next few minutes.
Yes, I want to second that, but I'm going to provide some information. I'll just speak up. Okay, so what I have here is the revenue which we... Okay, there we go now. So what I have here is the lifetime revenue going back to 2006 and 7. The city net revenue, $267,000, and then it increased up to $360,000 projected for 2017 to 18. And then for 2018 through 2024, it was projected to go up to $360,000. So, and the percentages that were going to Cupertino used to be 20%, then it moved to 16%, and now we're looking at 12%, and we're down to between 200,000 and 220,000. So when this does come back, I would like to have the percentage that that Cupertino retains be addressed, because it looks like we are currently doing receiving less than we were in 2006 and 7, and I'd like to have a staff report that explains why that happened. If it makes sense, if there's a good reason for it, that's great. If it doesn't make sense, I'd like to know that as well. Thank you.
Okay, so you did second Councilmember Chow's motion, right?
Just to clarify the way that procurement works for these kind of services. So the city develops an RFP, and then that RFP is made available to service providers, to vendors. The vendors submit a proposal. Staff ranks the proposal based on predetermined criteria, and tries to pick the best proposal. So there seem to be comments made tonight that suggest that this is more of an ad hoc negotiation, but we have a fairly structured procurement process as a public agency.
I mean, if I may, I'm sure we can demonstrate or just provide, the qualifications that we considered, but those were clearly identified in the RFP. So each proposer had an opportunity to propose their response, to provide responses to how they would develop the program, how they would provide classes, what their experience was. And so it was a fair evaluation with regard to asking each proposer to provide the same information. After we made that assessment is when we began discussing negotiation items that ended up being the ultimately the contract that's being presented now. So if we kept all things, if we went back and said we don't want to consider any of the options, then I'm sure we can do that. But again, even if it was a 5-year contract, for example, with no capital improvement, at this point, Lifetime Activities would still be the highest ranked vendor, so we'd be entering an agreement with them for 5 years. If we attempt to say we should redo the RFP, I think the most important point is to understand what would we do differently, right? What are the qualifications that we would be looking for beyond or beyond kind of the best practices that we've already built in to a template that we use for most things. The final thing I'll add is beyond our advertisement within the city's bid website, which is required in the municipal code, we took the additional step and bid on DemandStar. So DemandStar is a publicly available solicitation site where it only advertises public bids and RFPs. And so we did that with the effort to get as broad of outreach as we can. So I think that, even though we only had 2 responders, we did, I believe, our due diligence to, reach out as broad as we can, provide as much information as we could, and also take in any questions, right? Throughout the RFP process, any interested proposer can always ask questions. And so if there's lacking information, they desire to know more about the program or aren't clear about what needs to be submitted, there's always an opportunity for them to do that. I don't believe that we received questions in that regard. Oh, we did? Okay, so we did receive questions, I apologize. And so we responded to those. And so that engagement is always the opportunity for proposers to consider or get better information with regard to what the city is looking for. And so I believe we've gone through that process, with regard to what our policy outlines, what our templates have outlined, what our municipal code allows for. But again, happy to take feedback from council, city manager otherwise, with regard to revising it and potentially going back out or at least looking more carefully at the evaluation criteria that we used in selecting Lifetime Activities in this agreement.
I wanted to propose a substitute motion and just wanted to make a few comments. The city does have a well-defined procurement process. In this case, there were 2 applicants, and it sounds like the process was followed. I mean, you can only select one. It's like a job, selecting someone for a job. If there are 2 applicants, you select one. It doesn't mean the other person is not qualified, but you're rating one against the other, and in this case, you looked at 2 vendors, went with the Lifetime. Because they have a history. They've been with us since 1994. I talked to Sunnyvale. They've had a 10-year contract with Lifetime. And I think maybe staff mentioned that San Francisco has a 10-year contract with Lifetime to maintain their sports centers. So there is a process in place. The process was followed. I'm not hearing anything that tells me that the process was contaminated in any way. So we have a vendor that was selected based on the expertise of our staff, who are the experts more than we are. And there is, and their recommendation is to go with Lifetime activities for the sports center. I'm also hearing from the city manager that the items that were listed as their to-do list are completely open to discussion, and that we would be not holding them or expecting them to do any of that we would get a further chance to decide how and when and why we want the sports center, tennis courts versus pickleball courts, to be reconfigured. Having said that, and keeping in mind that the contract expires end of December of this year, we need a contract, and I am saying that if the 10-year contract is too hard to swallow, keeping in mind that we will lose out on the revenues, but we could go in with a short-term, a 5-year contract, which would keep operations in place. We wouldn't be doing anything with pickleball courts and tennis courts till a further discussion happens. But for now, we'd have a contract in place. We'd lose the revenue, but at least the sports center would keep going the way it is now. So it's a long, sort of winded motion, but my motion is to go with a 5-year contract with Lifetime.
So I'll second that, and just note, in addition to the issue of not wanting to have the contract run out and the service lapse, that I do think that there's a sort of question of fairness here in terms of the bidding process, that if this were to all get redone, that now the two competitors have visibility on each other's bids, and that just seems improper to me. So I appreciate the motion, Mayor Mohan.
Okay, Councilmember Moore, you had a comment?
Well, it's actually a question. After sharing the estimated amount of revenue paid to the city, going back in time, why does someone have a ready answer for why we are projecting to be earning less than we did in 2006 and 7? The city net revenue then was $267,000. We're projecting our first year to have $200,000. It seems like we're not doing very well with this, and inflation, something should have had this increase.
All I can say to that is that we did go out for competitive bid process, and this is what we got. We do receive, out of the cities that Lifetime is located at, which is 6 different cities, we do receive the highest percentage from Lifetime than any other city.
At 12? So at 20, we were higher than everyone.
Most cities receive 4 to 5% in revenue.
I think we all need to take up tennis and learn how to coach it. Okay. All right. Do you have something to add? Yeah.
The only thing I was going to add to that is that the Lifetime contract has, over the years, done a lot of different things, where some of it was about percentage, some of it was about a rental fee, some of it was about whether or not they get space. So over the years, just the percentage doesn't necessarily speak to what the whole contract was. But to your point, yes, it is from the competitive process right now, and we still are making quite a bit more than any of the other cities there.
Okay. That's hard to hear, but thank you.
Are we ready to vote on the... Okay. Councilmember Chow, one last comment, please.
So, sorry, it escaped me. So, I think the coach quality is the main issue. Is any of the criteria in a coach quality in your criteria list? Because it seems I'm getting the information. We would use the same criteria for whatever RFP we have. If we are getting a vendor for classification system, for IT system, for tennis center management, are we using the same criteria? And also, since the RFP is not in the agenda packet, none of the proposals are. I'm blind. You are asking us to blindly trust staff recommendation.
I believe those are public information, and we can make that readily available to you right away.
They're not. The RFP itself is public.
Made public.
Correct. Just to clarify, yeah, so we did ask for staff qualifications. One of the specific asks was identify the project manager, which would be the coordinator, key staff involved in delivering the services outlined in the RFP, which we all know what those are, identify the role of each, and describe each team member's experience, qualifications, and proposed role in this service. So we asked for that in addition to what public experience they have actually serving clients in this environment.
Yeah, but not coach qualification. They're minimum requirement for different player of different levels.
So typically what we ask is a consultant to identify what roles they have. So for example, right, if you have a coach or a senior coach or a specialized coach, you know, we may not know what all of the different roles are that the consultant, or in this case the vendor, would provide. We leave that open for them to tell us how are they going to define or provide a team that will demonstrate how they're going to deliver the services. So we don't tell them exactly, I want this coach or this, you know, because that will actually limit them to fit within the box that we define. So we leave it open so they have the ability to tell us how are they going to structure a team that's going to work.
But is the RFP clear that they can provide different options for percentage or donation? That wasn't clear.
So there are two places where we ask for that. Actually, when we talk about their project work plan and approach, one specific thing we say is, additionally, identify approaches to resolve potential critical issues and other elements of concern. So in this instance, Lifetime specifically proposed capital investment as an option to address what we would say
not as part of the proposal. It was later when they see a higher bid, right?
No,
it was part of their proposal.
Correct.
Okay.
So that's a factor that we have to consider when we're actually evaluating their proposal. So each of them saw that and had the ability to potentially propose what they saw as, you know, improvements or areas that could be critical risk, you know, if in fact they identified any of those.
Okay, so we do have a substitute motion and a second.
Mayor, may I just have clarification on the motion? Does it include bullet point number 2 to authorize the city manager to execute the contract with Lifetime consistent with council direction? And that's just for the substitute motion.
Right, yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. To execute the contract. And my substitute motion says the contract is for 5 years.
5 years. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so we have, should we do a voice vote? Oh, you have a quick comment. Okay, Vice Mayor Fruin.
Yeah, I just wanted to note for the members of the public who expressed a lot of concern about the capital improvement items that were part of the original proposal, that with the 5-year contract, that particular item goes away. So though I'm not usually in favor of throwing away extra money from someone else, it does sound like there's a lot of concern about that issue. If there were to be capital improvements at this site, they would go through some other process and be funded a different way.
Right. That is true. A voice vote, please, Madam City
Yes.
Clerk.
Councilmember Chow?
No.
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Wei?
She said aye.
Yes. Vice Mayor Fruin?
Aye.
Mayor Mohan?
Aye.
The substitute motion carries with Chow voting no.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Time-wise, where are we, Mr. City Attorney?
So we are, in the absence of a motion to extend the meeting will adjourn by roll.
Just a quick question for the city attorney. So this is because from our meeting link, the discussion of an agenda item shall not begin after 10:30 p.m. That's
Without
correct.
a motion of the council, yes, correct.
Okay, all right.
In the absence of action by council, they will all be continued to the December 3rd meeting.
Ray, I see your hand is up.
Yes, I have a request because I have a doctor's appointment in half an hour. So I would like to be able to adjourn the meeting right now and move the rest of items to the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay, hearing no motion, I believe that means we are adjourned by rule.
Okay, so we are adjourned. Thank you very much for all those who stayed till the bitter end.